Chapter 761. As soon as the two of them came out, they choked on a mouthful of dust. With a flick of their sleeves, they swept away the hazy gray air in front of them and lightly coughed twice. The perfectly fine wing room in the city lord's estate had now become a wasteland. Yin lowered her head to glance at his little one and pursed her lips into a smile. "Jojo, we have to change rooms tonight." Arbor rolled her eyes at him. Huifeng passed through the window with a sound. When he saw the two of them, his gaze relaxed slightly, and he exhaled. Although he had received the Crown Prince's message earlier that he and the Crown Princess were fine, Huifeng still felt uneasy without seeing the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess with his own eyes. "This subordinate came too late to rescue your highness." All right. Yin waved her hand and said, "The Crown Princess and I are both fine. Are there any casualties among the hidden guards outside?" "In reply to your highness, only a few people were bitten by venomous snakes, but they have already taken the antidote and are fine for the time being." Huifeng cupped his hands and said, "This subordinate dispatched people to search Bailon City and discovered traces of several people from Shantian Prefecture. This subordinate was incompetent and was still a bit late, so we weren't able to catch those fish that escaped the net from Shantian Prefecture. Will your highness please mete out punishment? Luigi's group's whereabouts are strange and cunning. Besides, you aren't their match, so don't make unnecessary sacrifices." Arbor shook her head and said, "That midget who came to assassinate me this time is from Shantian Prefecture. He should be the twin brother of that midget who delusionally tried to poison the Crown Prince in the Qin estate last time. I think they look exactly the same." "Shantian Prefecture again," Yin snorted. "These fish that escaped the net from Shantian Prefecture have been hiding in nooks and crannies for the past 2 years, so it was a bit difficult to find them." "No hurry, just take your time to find them." Arbor was expressionless. What she wanted was to uproot them completely. "What about that midget?" In reply to the Crown Princess, "Only half of the midget's corpse is left. Should he be hung at Bailon City's city gate and flogged for 3 days and nights for the crime of great disrespect?" Arbor shook his head. "No need. His corpse is so ugly and bloody. If we hang at the city gate, we don't want to scare the people coming and going." Huifeng lowered his head and chuckled as he cupped his fists in salute. "Yes, then this subordinate will go and burn him, so that he won't turn into a corpse and cause trouble." Arbor nodded, and Yin held his little hand as they walked out of the dusty and dilapidated room. City Lord Lin, who had heard the news, repeatedly thanked the heavens and personally led the two of them to the newly prepared room to rest. At this time, it was already deep into the night. Because the city lord's estate had suddenly been attacked, it had been tossed around until the middle of the night. Bailon City had even issued several curfews in succession to strictly investigate the people who left the city. That dead gnome knows how to burrow. Those fish from Shantian Prefecture that escaped the net must have left through the underground passageway. Arbor pondered for a moment before saying, "City Lord, go find some experts in underground reconnaissance and find that secret passageway that leads outside the city. Hurry up and seal it so as to avoid being exploited by thieves." Yes. City Lord Lin's forehead was about to break out in sweat. The Crown Princess's successive mishaps in his Bailon City made him so anxious that he was like an ant on a hot pan, constantly running in circles. Thus, he listened to Arbor's instructions and sent people to find experts in underground reconnaissance overnight to hurry to the place where Luigi and the others had previously stayed at in Shantian Prefecture to investigate the traces of the secret passageway. Arbor and Yin also felt a bit tired after being tossed around for so long, so they each washed up and returned to their rooms to sleep. Chapter 762. It wasn't until noon the next day that Lin Yongyi personally came to report that he had indeed found the secret passage leading out of the city and had sent people to deal with it. Yin walked into the room. She immediately saw the little girl tilting her head and using a small spoon to feed a white squirrel a life-prolonging medicinal liquid. Yin naturally recognized this furry white squirrel. What's wrong with it? 2 years ago, it blocked a fatal blow from a mystic cultivator from Shantian Prefecture for me, and then it fell into a coma. Arbor reached out to stroke the little white squirrel's fur. I gave it life-prolonging medicinal liquid, but it was useless. Jojo, I don't think it's seriously injured. The Crown Prince walked up and pulled a stool to sit next to Arbor. He reached out to pinch the little white squirrel's small ears. This little beast isn't as simple as it appears on the surface. I feel that it is advancing in rank. Arbor opened her mouth in shock, but then shook her head repeatedly. Impossible. Chochio and the others advance in rank at most 3 to 4 months. This little guy has already been unconscious for more than 2 years. How can it be advancing in rank for more than 2 years? If it's not advancing in rank, then it's recovering. Recovering? Arbor glanced at the Crown Prince in shock. What do you mean? Prince Emo reached out to grasp her small hand. Do you think that this little beast is just an ordinary mystic beast? No. Arbor immediately shook her head and said bluntly, when I first saw it, I only thought that it was an ordinary forest little beast. It can't be called a mystic beast at all. Prince Emo immediately turned his face and couldn't help but laugh loudly. Jojo, you really need to properly train your, eyesight. Eyesight. Arbor snorted and didn't give him any face. She even rolled her eyes at him. This little beast most likely isn't a mystic beast. Maybe it's a spirit beast, or maybe a divine beast. What? Arbor's round, black eyes widened. He shook his head and said, You're thinking too much. Let me tell you, my little squirrel, it only knows how to identify magnetite and mine magnetite. Other than that, I've never seen it have any special abilities. Arbor tilted his head and thought for a while. Biting people is also a skill. It carries a deadly poison, but according to my research, this deadly poison can only kill 5 or 6 people at most. Also, mystic cultivators above level 11 will greatly increase their defense against poison. Yin lifted the little white squirrel onto her lap and turned to look at Arbor with a smile. Jojo, why don't you feed it some strong medicine? For example, the previous batch of poisonous snakes? Cut open their bodies and take out their gallbladders. Arbor's eyes lit up. Will it work? It's better than feeding it life-extending elixir all day. That batch of poisonous snakes is considered a mystic beast with some success, so there must be some power essence left in their gallbladders. Yin lifted the little white squirrel up. In short, it won't harm it. The two looked at each other. Arbor seemed to have made up his mind and nodded vigorously. Thus, Yin ordered people to take the gallbladders of the dead snakes that attacked Arbor and feed them to the little white squirrel every day. In less than 2 days, the little white squirrel's body indeed underwent a strange change. Its fluffy tail grew longer, its fur became glossy, and its entire body emitted a lustrous white light. Chapter 763. Seeing that the snake gallbladder was effective, Arbor hastily carried the little white squirrel and ran to find Yin, discussing with him how to catch more mystic beasts to feed the little squirrel. Yin couldn't help but reach out in amusement and hug this impatient little one. There aren't any mystic beasts in the vicinity, but there might be zombies. Mystic beasts usually only appear in the Mystic Beast Forest, which is a bit too far from here. We still have to hurry back after we're done with the matters here. In this case, you should be at ease. That squirrel wasn't injured at all. Perhaps that person's palm strike 2 years ago just happened to hit the seal on its body. It has been recovering these past 2 years. Yin lowered his head to look at Jojo, his expression somewhat solemn. I suspect that its original body isn't like this at all. What kind of original body would need such a long time to recover? Arbor stared blankly at him. Would we be like this? Yin laughed in spite of himself and pressed his forehead against hers. His dark phoenix eyes roamed around as he gazed deeply at her. Jojo, don't worry. Even if you don't feed it, it will slowly recover on its own. It'll just take a bit longer. If we can find something that can help it recover, such as snake gallbladders or mystic beast cores, perhaps it can help and speed up its recovery. But time is tight for our trip, and we still have to return to the Mo Kingdom capital to celebrate the new year. How about this? I'll have Morning Sunlight Pavilion search and bring over all the usable mystic beast cores for you. After we celebrate the new year, we can find an opportunity to make a trip to the Mystic Beast Forest and help find even more Mystic Beast cores. Arbor nodded repeatedly, gazing at Mo Lien with sparkling eyes. In that case, Chirpy should be able to recover very quickly and wake up, right? That's right. Mo Lien cupped her small face and planted a kiss on her pink and tender cheek. After the new year, I'll go with you. Your Highness. Lin Yongyi's anxious voice suddenly sounded from outside the room. Mo Lien raised her hand and pinched Arbor's little face, loosened her waist, and casually straightened her robe and sat down. Come in. As soon as Lin Yongyi entered, he hurriedly greeted the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess. The Crown Princess was wearing a white robe and was holding a fat, snow-white ball in her arms. She sat beside the Crown Prince and glanced at him. Lin Yongyi didn't dare to look, nor did he see clearly what was in the Crown Princess' arms. He only bowed respectfully, took 2 steps back, and said with a lowered head, Your Highness, something happened at the farm this morning. For some reason, the people in the farm are all vomiting and having diarrhea. They can't get off the ground at all. Where's Hong Yaowei? Hong Yaowei has the same symptoms. Other than Hong Yaowei, the other 6 or 7 commissioners who are responsible for the growth of the yellow stems all have vomiting and diarrhea. Even the guards, maids, and servants of the farm are all the same. Mo Lien stood up and said, Let's go to the farm. He was about to turn around and tell Jojo that he was leaving for a while when he saw the little fellow running to his side with a chubby squirrel in her arms. She looked up and said, Let's go together. Mo Lien had always agreed to his little emperor baby's request. When he heard this, he didn't think much and nodded. Okay, this humble subject will go prepare the carriage for the Crown Princess. No need, just ride a horse. Arbor didn't care so much. Mo Lien smiled slightly, reached out to take the little fellow's little hand, and walked out quickly. Prepare the horse. See you tomorrow. Chapter 764. The two rode on the same horse and headed to the farm. Lin Yongyi followed with Old Man Sun, explaining to the Crown Prince what happened to the farm along the way. According to Lin Yongyi, everything was fine at the farm yesterday. Those troublemakers also didn't dare to cause trouble under the Crown Prince's tyrannical suppression. Although the group led by Hong Yaowei was angry, they didn't dare to cause trouble at the farm. After all, no one wanted to lose their heads for no reason. What did they eat this morning? Prince Mo asked faintly. Lin Yongyi followed behind Prince Mo on his horse and hurriedly said, Breakfast was prepared by the kitchen. But now, everyone in the farm, including the people in the kitchen, is vomiting and having diarrhea. What did the doctor say? The doctor went early in the morning. He wrote a prescription and boiled medicine, but it doesn't seem to be effective. As they spoke, the group quickly arrived at the entrance of the farm. Mo Lien dismounted and reached out to carry Qiao Qiao, who was playing with the little squirrel with her head lowered, off the horse. His arm very naturally looped around her slender waist, and he quickly walked into the farm with her in his arms. Lin Yongyi and the others hurriedly followed. As soon as they entered, they saw the guards of the city lord's estate who were originally guarding the door also collapsed on the ground, quietly crying out in pain. Arbor glanced at the guards on the ground and was gently pulled by Mo Lien around his waist. His footsteps involuntarily moved forward. Many people were lying in disorder in the farm, each of them half curled up and holding their stomachs as they rolled around. Xiao Yi led a dozen members of the night pavilion and quickly walked out of the house to greet the Crown Prince. They all bowed in unison. What's going on? Prince Mo's gaze swept over them. Your Highness, we didn't eat the food and water on the farm. Xiao Yi bowed and said, Our brothers are all fine. The doctor is here. The doctor is here. Doctor, I'm still in pain. Can you write another prescription? When the doctor passed by the flower bed, he was stopped by a woman who begged. AI, this old man has already written all the medicine that could be prescribed. The way I see it, it doesn't seem as simple as having a stomachache. The old doctor shook his head repeatedly and said, This old man feels that this is rather similar to the symptoms of being poisoned. It hurts. My stomach hurts. Mother. A little boy who had fallen on the side of the dirt road was rolling on the ground and crying. Unfortunately, his parents couldn't even take care of themselves right now. Arbor quickly stuffed the little white squirrel in his arms into Mo Yin's hands and waved in the direction of the little boy. Bring him over. The boy was only 7 or 8 years old. At this time, he was in so much pain that he was sweating profusely. His face was dirty with snot and tears. Lin Yongyi hurriedly took out a clean handkerchief and said in front of Arbor, "Crown Princess, let me do it." As she spoke, she hurriedly wiped the boy's dirty face with a white cloth and brought him in front of Xiao Mu. "Where does it hurt?" Arbor reached out to feel the boy's pulse. The boy kept shaking his arm as he cried and mumbled, "It hurts everywhere. It hurts everywhere. It hurts everywhere." Lin Yongyi, old man's son, and the others couldn't help but twitch the corners of their mouths. Arbor didn't get angry. He raised his hand and patted the little boy's head. "You're a man. What are you crying for? Stop crying." The boy stopped crying with reddened eyes, but his eyes were still filled with tears. He looked pitifully at Arbor and said, "Sister, if you're in as much pain as I am, you'll cry too." Chapter 765. What nonsense are you talking about? City Lord Lin pulled a long face, scaring the child into silence. Arbor waved his hand at Lin Yongyi, took out a long silver needle from his needle bag, and waved it in front of the little boy. Of course, elder sister won't cry. If elder sister is in pain, she will seal her acupoints with silver needles and seal her 5 senses. That way, she won't feel pain. The little boy's eyes followed the silver needle in Arbor's hand. Elder sister, are you going to give me a needle? Will it stop hurting after the needle? Then are you scared? No, go ahead. The boy reached out his hand and patted his chest hard. Arbor inserted the needle without hesitation. After 2 needles, the little boy drowsily closed his eyes. Move him into the room. Give me a pen and paper. Arbor stood up and said, "Jojo, do you know what kind of poison they were poisoned with?" Mo Yin's eyes curved slightly, revealing a trace of a smile. "It's not poison. This child has no symptoms of fever, vomiting, diarrhea, and unbearable abdominal pain. I can't find any toxins in his body, if I'm not wrong. They should have mistakenly ingested Edelweiss." "How is that possible?" The old doctor flung his sleeves hard. "This is clearly some kind of heat poison. We should buy some pills to clear away heat and detoxify for them." "No need." Arbor took the pen and paper handed over by old man's son and wrote down a few herbs on the paper. "City Lord, I'll have to trouble you with these herbs. Let the people in the pharmacy boil them into a decoction according to the prescription." "Crown Princess, you're too kind. This is the duty of this humble official. This humble official will immediately send people to do it." Lin Yongyi took the prescription and hurriedly ordered 2 confidants to go to the pharmacy to get the herbs and boil them. When the old doctor saw that Arbor dared to reject his diagnosis at such a young age, he was so angry that he picked up his medicine box and walked out. "What's wrong with him?" Xiao Mu looked up at Mo Yin in bewilderment, and she also reached out to take the little white squirrel that she had stuffed into his hands. "He saw that you were young and didn't believe in your medical skills." Seeing that no one was paying attention to him, he flew into a rage out of humiliation and could only leave. Arbor said indifferently, "I don't need others to believe me." "Idiot." Emollien's heart skipped a beat. She raised her hand and stroked the hair on her little head. "I don't care if others believe it or not. I believe it." Xiao Mu glanced back at him from the corner of her eye, but when she retracted her gaze, the corner of her mouth turned up imperceptibly. Soon, the pharmacy staff made a large tub of decoction according to Arbor's prescription. Arbor looked at the people lining up to get the medicine and couldn't help but mutter to himself, "Don't you think it's a little strange? Why is that person making such a big fuss? Is it just to make people vomit, have diarrhea, and have stomach aches?" The speaker didn't mean it, but the listener took it seriously. Emmollien's eyes narrowed slightly. She secretly pulled Arbor's little hand and turned to give Lin Yongyi a look. The 3 of them quickly walked to the fields behind the farm. "Your Highness, you suspect that this person is just creating a diversion, and his main goal is to destroy a large area of the yellow pole field?" Lin Yongyi's steps suddenly stopped. His body staggered slightly, and he ran forward a few steps. He looked at the withered yellow pole and cried out agitatedly, "How could this be? How could this be?" Lin Yongyi hurriedly jumped onto the ridge and ran into the field. Chapter 766. Someone, search the manor from top to bottom and see who isn't in the manor right now. The Crown Prince's eyes darkened deeply. Arbor could sense the Crown Prince's fury bursting forth, and she scratched his palm with her small hand to pacify him. As far as her eyes could see, a large patch of withered crops was lying askew in the field. She didn't know that before today, the yellow stalks in this field had been growing brilliantly, and it was almost time for harvest. Grief welled up in Lin Yongyi's heart, and he couldn't resist kneeling in the field and bawling his eyes out. It's over, it's over, it's over, everything is over. The yellow stalks that he had spent so much time and effort on, enough to feed all of Bailon City's citizens, were destroyed by someone just like that. Your Highness, Your Highness. Xiao Yi hastily returned with another youth and reported through gritted teeth, "Your Highness, it's Feng Manyun. Feng Manyun and her maid, Xiang Qin, have both disappeared." Prince Mo was startled. He simply didn't remember this person called Feng Manyun. "Your Highness, it's that Celestial Medicine Valley's physician, Feng, who disturbed the Crown Princess's secluded cultivation when you ordered her not to stay in the city lord's estate a few days ago." Seeing that his master clearly didn't remember, Huifeng quickly reminded him. "It's her." Recalling Feng Manyun's coquettish and pretentious gaze of adoration, Prince Mo felt his stomach churn incessantly. Physician Feng, Lin Yongyi, who was sitting on a piece of barren land, suddenly jumped up and bellowed furiously. "Physician Feng did it? Where is she? Where's she right now? Vicious woman. Look at what she's done. Why have all the yellow stalks in this field withered to death? Did she use some kind of vicious medicine to poison the entire land to the point that it became a wasteland? Ah, my yellow stalks." Lin Yongyi sprawled on the withered ground, gripping a handful of black soil as tears streamed down his face in dejection. Lin Yongyi was regretting his actions to death right now. If he hadn't felt some sympathy for Physician Feng back then, he wouldn't have ended up in this situation today. That day, when he received the Crown Prince's order to chase Feng Manyun out of the city lord's estate, he couldn't bear to let her wander the streets, so he secretly dispatched her to the manor. Who would have thought that he had nurtured a tiger that would bite him back? Lin Yongyi slapped himself in the face. At this moment, he was filled with regret, but he was powerless to reverse the situation. As expected, he was not a person who could accomplish great things. If he had received the Crown Prince's order and chased this poisonous woman out of the manor, who cared if she died or not? Then how could he have ruined such a good harvest today? Lin Yongyi pounded the ground and cried bitterly. Arbor's eyebrows moved slightly. Based on my conjecture, she must have ground the edelweiss into powder and scattered it into the well. She must have done something to the drinking water of the manor. This vicious woman. Old man's son spat angrily. "How many wells do you have here? Take me there," Arbor suddenly said. "This person is narrow-minded and vicious. I reckon he still has some tricks up his sleeve." Arbor's lips curled up slightly. Lin Yongyi raised his hand to give himself another huge slap before scrambling to the Crown Prince. He wailed miserably, Your Highness, it's this humble official's fault. This humble official is slow-witted." All right. Stop wailing and howling here. Go see if Hong Yao's abdominal pain has recovered yet. If it has, then have him immediately bring people down to the ground. If they can't recover the yellow stalks, we will have their heads, Emol Yin declared gravely. Lin Yongyi promptly crawled to the manor's forecourt, looking for Hong Yao with reddened eyes. Chapter 767. Crown Princess, please follow this old man. Meanwhile, Old Man's son led the way at the front, bringing the Crown Princess, the Crown Prince, and the others to one of the wells. Old Man's son ordered a sturdy man to fetch a bucket of well water and bring it to Arbor. When Arbor picked up the water ladle, Emol Yin reached over and rolled up her loose sleeves slightly. Arbor scooped up a ladle of water and sniffed it before casually sprinkling a pinch of medicinal powder in it. After a light sizzle, the water inside the ladle instantly turned a thick black color, and a foul odor wafted out, causing everyone to retreat a few steps. Arbor shook her sleeves and sprinkled some more medicinal powder in, dispelling the foul odor in the water. She then turned to Old Man Sun and said, "Quickly inform everyone in the manor that they can't drink water for the time being. Jojo, is the powder of the tinder grass in this well water the one you mentioned?" Emolien asked gravely. "No, it's highly toxic." Arbor's expression also turned grave, and she said coldly with a smirk, "Feng Manyun probably poisoned it again before she left. This water has been laced with a type of highly toxic poison that can cause a person to bleed from their 7 orifices and die an unnatural death with just a single mouthful." Old Man Sun jumped in fright, and he hastily instructed those 2 fearful, sturdy lads to bring this news to everyone in the manor in the forecourt. Isn't Celestial Medicine Valley a place to treat illnesses and save people? The poison that it has developed is different from the usual. I will need about 7 to 8 minutes to dispel the poison water here. Other than this well water, are there other wells? Yes. There's another one behind it. There's another one, which is a channel specially used to irrigate farmland. The vicious woman wouldn't have also done something to that, right? It's very possible. Old Man Sun's eyes bulged, and he couldn't resist cursing, "This vicious woman. She's simply deranged." "All right, you don't need to accompany me here. After I'm done detoxifying the poison in the well, I'll gather all of you." After Arbor finished speaking, he winked at Emolien. Actually, why would she need 15 minutes to detoxify the poison? While speaking, she had already restored the well water to its original state. After Old Man Sun and the others left, she took Emolien's hand and walked toward another well behind them. "Emolien, I wonder if this bit of sacred soil of mine, combined with the sacred water's effects, can restore your yellow pole field?" Xiaomu took out a small cloth and unraveled it, revealing a pinch of soil inside. After exchanging glances with Xiaomu, Emolien immediately revealed a smile. "Quickly try it. Let's go." The 2 of them first went to detoxify the other well, then walked towards the channel beside the ridge. Meanwhile, giddy up, Xiangqin held the reins as she drove the carriage. She lowered her head to look at her hand, which was slightly red and swollen from being scratched by the reins. She then turned her head to look into the carriage. "Mississippi, we're about to leave the city." Feng Manyun had wrapped herself in the quilt, and her hands and feet twitched from time to time. She scolded with a crooked mouth, "Hurry, hurry, hurry. Quickly leave the city, leave the city." Xiangqin sighed and quickly whipped the horse, driving the carriage out of Bailon City. As soon as they left the city, they naturally arrived at a messy shanty town. Normally, Feng Manyun would still be patient enough to greet these people, but right now, she wasn't in the mood at all. Especially when she recalled how she had been forced to grovel in front of that little bitch several days ago under everyone's watchful eyes. Her face was filthy and her whole body was humiliated. It was as if her heart had been scalded by fire, and it couldn't help but burn. Chapter 768. Physician Feng. The assistant manager in charge of the tent district's safety saw a carriage passing by him the moment he lifted the tent curtain. The carriage curtain was lifted by the wind, and when he saw Feng Manyun's face, he hastily chased up to stop the carriage. Xiangqin could only helplessly stop the carriage. She shifted her gaze to the assistant manager and asked impatiently, "Assistant manager, why are you blocking our Mrs. Carriage?" Physician Feng, it's truly great to see you," the assistant manager cheerfully called out. "Physician Feng, quickly get off the carriage and take a look. Do you still remember? The patient you visited a few nights ago. His condition seems to have worsened. Why don't you take a look again?" "Apologies, assistant manager, but we are in a hurry to return to Celestial Medicine Valley." Xiangqin rolled her eyes at the assistant manager irritably and raised her horsewhip. "Will you please make way?" "Tisk, that won't do. Physician Feng, how can you be like this? You have to go all the way to saving a person, right?" The assistant manager tangled with the 2 people and blocked the carriage, unwilling to leave. As they spoke, many commoners also walked out of their tents to watch the commotion. Upon hearing that Physician Feng had come, the commoners all gathered around in great delight. Feng Manyun abruptly lifted the curtain, and her ghastly pale small face wrapped in the quilt abruptly appeared before the assistant manager. She abruptly cracked a crooked smile and shrieked at the assistant manager. "Why are you so annoying? Scram! Scram! Scram!" The assistant manager was startled by Feng Manyun's malevolent appearance, and he subconsciously retreated 2 steps back. He smacked his lips in bewilderment and stammered, "Physician Feng, why? Why are you so angry?" "It's fine if you don't want to see him. Is there need to treat him like this?" The assistant manager grumbled before moving to the side in displeasure. "Physician Feng, is it Physician Feng who came?" At this time, a young woman suddenly rushed out of the tent in front and pounced to block Feng Manyun's carriage, wailing, "Physician Feng, I beg you to take a look at my husband again. A few days ago, you said that he was already fine, but just now he coughed up blood again. Dr. Feng, I beg you." Feng Manyun, who was wrapped in the bed's blankets, looked askew at that young woman. Suddenly, she leaned forward and screeched with a twisted expression, "Scram! Get the hell out of here! Get away from me, you piece of trash! Stupid woman! Unruly people! You only deserve to live in a pigsty like this for the rest of your life." Young Miss. Xiang Qin was shocked. She hurriedly moved into the carriage from the driver's seat and went forward to cover her young Miss mouth. Xiang Qin turned her head and saw everyone's shocked expressions. She hurriedly waved her hand and said awkwardly, "Miss is also sick. Some of them are delirious. Don't force them. Hurry up and let us leave. I really didn't expect Dr. Feng to be such a person who fishes for fame. You were just pretending to be nice to us before, right? Haha, now you've completely revealed your true colors." The group of grannies and sisters-in-law who were originally greeting Feng Manyun with smiles in front of the carriage also turned around and returned to their tents in a huff. Feng Manyun, who was wrapped in a cotton blanket, watched everyone's departing figures sinisterly. Suddenly, she lifted the blanket and sneered at the assistant manager. "You, take me there." Chapter 769. The assistant manager was naturally overjoyed that Feng Manyun suddenly changed her mind and wanted to see the patient, so he didn't fuss over her rude and unreasonable attitude anymore. Mississippi Xiang Qin was the clearest about her Mrs. current state. Her mind was also a bit muddled from the stimulation she received a few days ago, and she still hadn't recovered yet. How could she still have the energy to see some patient? Feng Manyun arched her back as she got down from the carriage. The corners of her mouth and the tips of her eyes twitched unharmoniously, and she walked towards the tent in front of her with an aggressive and unreasonable expression. Underneath her sleeve was a slender silver needle dipped in poison. These lowly commoners actually dared to question her medical skills again and again. These lowly bastards should just die. Fine. Weren't they questioning her? Weren't they thinking that her medical skills were inferior and couldn't treat people? Fine then. She would thoroughly kill that lowly commoner today and just let him die. Kill him, kill him, kill him. A voice kept nagging at Feng Manyun in her mind. Feng Manyun's eyes and mouth were all crooked as she walked forward with her neck stretched out, looking like she was neurotic. Swish! Feng Manyun forcefully lifted the curtain in front of her, and the silver needle in her hand flashed onto the sunlight. Roar! An enormous mouth that grinned all the way to his ears abruptly appeared in front of her. Before she could react, that person had already pounced at her and hugged her body with astonishing strength. The other party's iron-like hand clammed down on her left arm and bit down on it, chewing the flesh raw. Feng Manyun was in so much pain that she trembled all over. "Miss!" Xiang Qin let out a heart-wrenching shriek. The young married woman also shrieked, "Hubby! Hey, don't go over! Don't go over!" The assistant manager reacted quickly and grabbed Xiang Qin and the young woman. He took a few steps back and shouted, Someone come quickly! Someone has mutated! Someone has mutated! Let go! Feng Mannion only felt that the other party had bitten off a chunk of flesh from her arm, and she was so frightened that she shuddered all over. The sturdy man howled at her small face, and with a crack, he actually broke Feng Mannion's left arm. "Oh, my hand! Save me! Save me! Xiangqin! Xiangqin!" In the midst of Feng Mannion's panic, the silver needles in her hand had long fallen off somewhere. "Miss! Miss!" Xiangqin was eager to protect her master. She threw away the assistant manager's hand and casually picked up a wooden stick. With a loud shout, she smashed it towards the strong man's back. "Let go of Miss! Let go of Miss!" "Ah!" The brawny man let out a roar that sounded like a human, but not a human. He suddenly turned his head and stared fiercely at Xiangqin with his bulging eyes. Plop! After suddenly losing the brawny man's grip, Feng Mannion clutched the wound on her left arm and collapsed to the ground with a plop. The stench of urine wafted from her body. Xiangqin hugged the rod and trembled like a sieve. She stared at the bulging eyes of the burly man and swallowed her saliva. Her forehead was covered in sweat, as if she had just been fished up from a river. It was still the assistant manager who saw the opportunity and kicked Xiangqin over, just in time to avoid the claw that the brawny man had pounced at her. The tent district guards had already rushed over after hearing the news. Several dozen guards donned battle helmets and were fully armed with sabers, swords, and clubs as they surrounded this mutated brawny man at the edge of the tent. Chapter 770. How is this possible? How is this possible? This person clearly didn't die. So why did he suddenly mutate? He was still fine earlier. Feng Mannion, who was sitting paralyzed on the ground, subconsciously pulled down her tattered sleeve to cover up the wound on her left arm with all her might. Her severed arm drooped down, and the bite wound was excruciatingly painful. Feng Mannion barely propped herself up and crawled backwards. It's fine, she'll be fine." Feng Mannion slowly shrunk backwards with a face drenched in sweat and tears, until a piercing voice rang beside her. "Someone come quickly. Physician Feng was bitten by a zombie." "No, I didn't, it's not. It's not a zombie. He's not a zombie." 5 to 6 burly men swarmed towards her and twisted her arm in reverse. They abruptly shoved her, pressing her face firmly against the filthy tent. "Ah!" Feng Mannion shrieked as if she had lost her mind, and she kept twisting her arm as she shouted sternly, "Let go of me! Let go of me! Let go of me! Let go of me!" Be careful not to get scratched by her. The assistant manager's pupils contracted when he saw the woman's deranged state. "Don't, assistant manager, don't." Xiangqin hastily went up to tug at the assistant manager's arm. "Let go of my miss. Miss is also a victim. You can't let go of her. Look at her arm." The women stared at Feng Mannion's left arm, which was dripping with blood continuously, in horror. "Let go of me, you bunch of cursed idiots. Lowly people, how dare you treat me like this? I won't let you off." Feng Mannion shrieked viciously, and her arms kept twisting as she tried to break free from the burly men's control. Bang! One of the burly men decisively punched her on the head. Feng Mannion's head tilted, and her eyeballs rolled around. She only felt her vision darken, and she gradually lost consciousness as she slumped into the crook of a burly man's arm. "Tie her up first." The assistant manager directed those burly men to find several sturdy ropes to bind Feng Mannion. Xiangqin was bawling her eyes out, and she knelt before the assistant manager with disheveled hair. "Assistant manager, I beg you, please don't harm our miss. Xiangqin, your miss has already been bitten by a zombie. She'll mutate very soon and become like that person." The assistant manager's face was filled with horror as he pointed at the mutated man who was being guarded by dozens of heavily armored guards. She won't. Miss won't lose her mind. Young Miss will be fine. Assistant manager, you have to believe me. Miss is one of the top 50 physicians in the Celestial Medical Valley. She will definitely be able to cure herself." Xiangqin scrambled to the vice manager's feet and hugged his leg as she cried out, "Before we left the valley this time, Mrs. Master gave Miss a profound-grade medicinal pill that can cure all kinds of illnesses." "Assistant manager, Miss her, assistant manager. Her. A black rank pill was a legendary item, and it could be considered the treasure of every major pill house. As expected of Celestial Medicine Valley, any random disciple could possess a black rank pill. Even members of the pill union might not necessarily possess this kind of black rank pill. MHM. Xiangqin wiped away the tears on her cheeks with her sleeve and nodded repeatedly. It's true, assistant manager. I'm not lying to you. It's true. Miss has a black rank pill on her. She does. Chapter 771. The assistant manager couldn't help but be skeptical. Where's that black rank pill right now? I can't say where it is, but as long as you wake Miss up and let Miss take this black rank pill, then she will definitely be fine, Xiangqin said with certainty. The assistant manager had people restrain the trussed-up phone minion first. Although you say this, for safety's sake, I can't completely believe your words for the time being. Let's tie her up first. Assistant manager. Xiangqin creased her brows and was about to speak when two sturdy women went up and grabbed her arms. Behave yourself. Roar. In the open space next to the tent, the mutated, burly man was tied up by several dozen guards with 3 to 4 arm-thick ropes, and he roared furiously at the sky. The City Lord's estate's guards each held a rope firmly in their hands, and they simultaneously exerted their strength with a roar to restrain the burly man's movements. The mutated, burly man roared several times as he tugged at the ropes around his limbs with all his might. He raised his hands above his head and opened his huge mouth to roar. 7 to 8 heavily armored City Lord's estate's guards were actually lifted up by the strength of his arms. Their feet abruptly left the ground, and they flailed about with shocked expressions. The remaining dozen or so guards instantly tightened the ropes around their arms, and they were dragged forward several steps by the mutated burly man's brute force. Their feet were firmly hooked to the ground, and they scraped up thick sand marks. Roar! The mutated burly man raised his head and roared furiously. Suddenly, he pulled over a nearby guard and snapped him into two, kicking him to the side like trash. Husband! The young woman's vision darkened, and she fainted on the spot from fright. During this tug and pull, several armored City Lord's estate's guards were no match for the mutated burly man's boundless strength, and they were pulled to the side and piled together like a human pyramid. The assistant manager hastily had people bring out bows and arrows while muttering, "Release the arrows, release the arrows, release the arrows." Swish, swish, swish. Several iron arrowheads pierced through the burly man's body, but the burly man didn't feel any pain. Instead, such an action angered him even more. An inhuman roar came from his mouth, and he suddenly raised his left arm. Several guards of the City Lord's mansion followed the force of his pull and pounced over. They were about to pounce on the burly man and be torn to pieces. Suddenly, a silver light flashed across the sky and pierced into the mutated brawny man's left eye with a swoosh, causing a terrifying hissing sound. The mutated man raised his head and roared as he staggered back a few steps. In the blink of an eye, a black figure suddenly stopped at the top of the tent. With a slight stomp of his feet, he leapt towards the mutated brawny man's head. Swoosh! The sword landed on the mutant man's neck, which was as hard as steel. This slash actually produced sparks from the collision. Young hero, be careful. The assistant manager stretched out his hand and shouted with a greatly changed expression. However, the newcomer turned a deaf ear to his shout and directly pulled out the long sword that was half embedded in the brawny man's neck. The sword was covered in a layer of pure, white, profound light, and the sword in his hand quickly swept across the brawny man's neck. The mutated brawny man let out an unpleasant, blood-curdling scream, and his entire body suddenly fell backwards, heavily smashing into the ground. In a short moment, his head fell from his neck and was sliced into 4 or 5 pieces by the sword in the black-clothed youth's hand. Clap, clap, clap. 2 or 3 scattered claps came from behind the crowd. Chapter 772. The assistant manager and the others turned to look, only to see a young man about 20 years old leading a dozen or so young men and women carrying swords striding over. He chuckled as he looked at the black-clothed youth who had made a move. Ha ha, I didn't expect our sixth young master Zheng to have such a heroic complex. Sigh, to actually draw his sword to help when he sees injustice on the road. TSK. This kind of character truly isn't like a member of the Zheng family. Truly impressive. The young man who spoke curled his lips mockingly as he cast a sidelong glance at the black-clothed youth. Make way, make way, make way. A dozen or so young men and women squeezed out from the crowd of onlookers. The man in the lead wore a brocade robe and was slightly plump. When he saw the black-clothed youth, his eyes suddenly lit up, and he hastily rubbed his hands as he walked up with a smile, calling out, "Sixth young master, sixth young master, why are you walking so fast?" Sixth Zheng sheathed his sword and calmly cast a sidelong glance at the plump young man. The plump young man cracked open his mouth and giggled foolishly. He abruptly turned his head and pursed his lips to glare at the young master who had mocked Sixth Zheng. "Hey, Hui Fan, are you looking for trouble for no reason? What? You're not convinced that you lost to our sixth young master in the previous competition? Then come at me." The young man who had mocked Sixth Zheng earlier was precisely the second brother of the Royal Guard Commander Hui Fan, a young lady who resembled Hui Fan somewhat, also with a square face and dashing eyebrows, gave a cold snort when she heard this. She cast a sidelong glance at sixth young Master Zheng and said, "Fishing for fame and compliments, putting on an act. You old lady who can't get married. Who are you saying is coarse?" "Coarse? Who are you talking about?" The plump young man couldn't say the words "fishing for fame and compliments" coherently, so he could only cough lightly and smooth things over for himself. "This daddy disdains to quarrel with an old lady like you. Wu Shaon, someone with such a low cultural level like you should speak less incoherently if you can't speak coherently. It's making people laugh." Hui Ling crossed her arms and swept a disdainful glance at the plump young man. Who dares to laugh? Who dares to laugh at an old fellow?" Wu Shaoan was so angry that his chubby face was bulging. Sixth Zheng. Hui Fan led his men and walked to the front of the black-clothed youth with his head held high. Along the way, our two teams were almost evenly matched, and we couldn't decide who was better. How about this from now on? We'll set a day as the limit. Whoever can get a dough of food first will be the winner. Everyone, let's rely on our own abilities, regardless of our methods. How about that? Do you dare to compete? By this time, the assistant manager had already recovered his wits, and he hastily led his subordinates to welcome sixth young Master Zheng. He repeatedly bowed and said, "Many thanks to this young master for lending a hand." Sixth Zheng cupped his fists in return and didn't say anything. His handsome face was taut from beginning to end, without the slightest hint of smile. "Go away, go away." Hui Ling rudely pushed aside the assistant manager who was squeezing between them and looked at sixth young Master Zheng with raised brows. "Sixth Zheng, did you hear what my brother said? Do you dare to make a statement?" "Fuck, old woman, who wouldn't dare?" Wu Xiao, and crooked his mouth and slanted his eyes. He looked back at Hui Fan and his sister with a disdainful expression. "Who are you calling an old woman?" Hui Ling swung a fist over, but it was directly blocked by Sixth Zheng's sword. Wu Shaoan hid behind Sixth Zheng and made a face at Hui Ling. "I'm talking about whoever responds. You're already 22, but you still haven't gotten married. Just look at the entire capital. How many old ladies are there like you? I'm going to beat you to death with your cheap mouth." Hui Ling's expression abruptly changed, and she raised her hand to slap Wu Shaoan, who was behind Sixth Zheng. Chapter 773. Sixth Zheng suddenly raised his hand and pushed his scabbard in front of Hui Ling, blocking her punch. He gazed at her coldly and said softly, "Not competing. Sixth Zheng, it's not like we're scared of them." A trace of unwillingness flitted across Wu Shao's chubby face. "Besides, we have you, so why should we be scared of them? Don't want to compete." Sixth Zheng withdrew his scabbard and turned to leave. Hui Ling abruptly shot forward to block his path, her willowy eyebrows furrowing as she reprimanded. "Sixth Zheng, what do you mean? Are you looking down on our flying rock operation team?" "Sigh, I'm just looking down on you guys. Wu Xiaoan's words made Hui Ling want to slap his cheap mouth again. Six Zheng glared coldly at Wu Xiaoan, causing him to shrink his neck and retreat back into the team. Miss Hui, we still have other important matters to attend to on this trip. Sixth Zheng's bright black gaze landed on Hui Ling's face, causing the latter to blush slightly as she guiltily avoided his gaze. Yo, Hui Ling, your face is all red. Ha. Wu Xiaoan, who had a cheap mouth, reverted to his old ways and laughed loudly. It can't be that you still have some unrealistic thoughts about our sixth young master, even now, right? You aren't married at such an old age, so it can't be that you're foolishly waiting for our sixth young master to grow up. Right, haha? This is too hilarious. You're a full 5 years older than sixth young master. You're an old lady, yet you're still thinking about sixth young master, who is in his prime. Why don't you go home and look in the mirror? Go to hell, Wu Xiaoan, you lowly wretch. See if I can't kill you. Hui Ling threw a cold saber at Wu Xiaoan's mouth. Six Zheng suddenly reached out, grabbing the laughing Wu Xiaoan and irritably slapping the back of his head. Enough nonsense. When the assistant manager saw that these two teams were about to come to blows, he hastily led people forward to stop them. Everyone, please calm down. You're the manager here, right? We want to enter the city. Hui Ling took her saber and roared at the assistant manager in humiliation. Everyone, my apologies. Bailon City is currently under martial law, and the city gates only open once a day. If you want to enter the city, you have to wait until tomorrow morning. So troublesome. Hui Ling hugged her saber and walked away angrily. Second brother, I want a separate tent. Fisk, Wu Xiaoan pursed his lips. There are many ugly people. Hui Fan swept a cold glance at Wu Xiaoan, who promptly rubbed his chin and sneakily hid behind Six Zheng. Hui Fan cupped his fists and saluted Sixth Zheng absent-mindedly. Sixth Zheng returned the salute and calmly watched the members of Operation Peng leave. Sixth Zheng, after we resupply in the city, we still have to continue with the mission. Wu Xiaoan muttered. Who would have thought that you, the sixth young master of the Zheng estate, would have to go out on missions to earn your living expenses? You reap what you sow. It's only right. Sixth Zheng sheathed his sword on his back and turned to walk towards the assistant manager to inquire about accommodations. Inside Bailon City's Yellow Pole breeding farm, when Hong Yaowei and the others were forcefully dragged by City Lord Lin to the embankment of the field, they saw the Crown Prince and Crown Princess smiling at each other as they stood in the middle of a patch of bright yellow pole field. At this time, Hong Yaowei already couldn't be bothered to look at how pleasing this handsome man and beautiful woman were to his eyes. He gaped with a stupefied expression as he dazedly looked at the suddenly ripe yellow pole field. He practically rubbed his eyes in disbelief. Chapter 774. How was that possible? It was impossible. According to their breeding records, it would take at least 8 to 9 days for this yellow pole field to reach the half-ripened stage. But it suddenly ripened today. Didn't they find it too strange? Hong Yaowei abruptly turned to look at City Lord Lin, only to see that Lin Yongyi also looked like he had seen a ghost. City Lord Lin, didn't you say that my junior sister ruined the yellow pole field? When Lin Yongyi came to find him just now, it was as if he had seen his father's murderer. He pounced on him and gave him a few punches without any explanation, beating him until the corners of his eyes were swollen. But now, wasn't it the greatest irony that the yellow pole field looked like it had a bountiful harvest? Lin Yongyi also subconsciously wiped his eyes. He hastily got off the ground and scooped up a handful of soil. After examining the yellow poles, he couldn't resist laughing with tears in his eyes. All right, this is great. City Lord Lin, what's going on? Hong Yaowei turned to look suspiciously in Arbor and Mo Lian's direction. On the way here, he had already heard that it was the Crown Princess who had skillfully cured the symptoms of the Edelweiss in their bodies. He also heard that she had also cured the lethal poison left behind by his junior sister, Feng Manyun, in the well. Hong Yaowei was filled with shock and suspicion. The poison in his junior sister's hands must have been brought out from Celestial Medicine Valley. It was an extremely poisonous substance. Even so, This crown prince consort was able to resolve it so easily. It could be seen that her medical skills were brilliant. The scariest thing was that he suspected that this crown princess might have some spirit herb that could accelerate the growth of plants. Thus, she could ripen the entire yellow pole field overnight. Unfortunately, City Lord Lin ignored him and didn't have the intention to explain to him. He simply threw himself into the yellow pole field and shouted while crying and laughing. After going through numerous trials and tribulations, this batch of yellow pole field finally ripened. Prince Mo grasped the little girl's small hand tightly and whispered into her ear, "You can't tell anyone about the sacred soil." A small pinch of sacred soil, plus the watering of sacred water, could actually revive nearly 10 mu of yellow pole field, resulting in such a bountiful harvest. Naturally, he couldn't let others know about such an eye-opening sacred object. Otherwise, it would be like the holy water, attracting covetous eyes and causing unnecessary trouble. Xiao Mu tilted her small head and nodded in understanding. The sacred land was in seclusion. Other than the sacred land in her hands, she didn't have anything else. After all, she still hadn't completely fused with the earth essence. If she could fuse with it like the holy water, she would be able to control the water and soil on her own. It would be much more convenient for her to plan anything. The little fellow looked up and whispered to him, "Yin, tell me what you want to plan in the future. I'll secretly put some holy soil in the ground and water it. When the time comes, you'll get whatever you want." It can also completely improve the quality of the soil, accelerate the harvest, and increase the yield. Yin was in a good mood as she reached out to pinch the little girl's tender cheeks. She reached out and hugged her. "My baby is really amazing. If the little guy had a tail, it would definitely be wagging it left and right," he said proudly. "Of course. Don't joke around." This was the power of the sacred land and holy water, the origin of the 5 spirits. It was just planting something. How could it not be easy? Yin couldn't help but laugh. He carried her and walked out of the field ridge. He whispered in her ear, "I'll get someone to collect this piece of land and plant another batch." While the effects of the sacred land and holy water hadn't completely disappeared, let the yellow pole seeds also freeload with great nourishment in the next round. Chapter 775. If his guess wasn't wrong, after the improvement of the sacred earth and sacred water, the yellow stalks planted in this 10 mu of farmland could be shortened by at least 1/3. Moreover, they didn't need to find a commissioner to take care of the farmland anymore. They only needed to send several honest farmers to be responsible for irrigating the fields regularly, so they basically didn't need to expend any effort. When the crown prince revealed this news to City Lord Lin, Lin Yongyi cried tears of joy again. This was great news. "City Lord Lin," Hong Yaowei questioned with a grim face, "what exactly is going on? Why is the Yellowstock field?" "Guards!" Lin Yongyi suddenly hollered, and the guards of the city lord's estate immediately swarmed over and bowed to await his order. "Break this person's limbs and throw him out of the farm immediately," Lin Yongyi bellowed while pointing at Hong Yaowei with a solemn expression. "Lin Yongyi, you dare?" Hong Yaowei was so anxious that his eyes had turned red, and he was forced to kneel on the ground. Hong Yaowei shrieked, "Lin Yongyi, I'm from Celestial Medicine Valley. Lin Yongyi, you bastard, you actually dared to lay your hands on me. I'm from the Mo Kingdom Capital's Hong Estate. You dare, you dare." Ah! Smack! A staff smashed heavily into Hong Yaowei's back. Hong Yaowei was only an ordinary physician, so wouldn't he fall to the ground while spitting out blood and foaming at the mouth from this strike? "Your junior sister, Feng Manyun, is vicious and wants to kill everyone in the entire farm. Don't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame that good junior sister of yours. People like you simply don't deserve to be physicians. Break his limbs for me. Make sure they can't practice medicine and harm people in the future." Lin Yongyi waved his hand resentfully, leaving behind a group of vicious subordinates to furiously smash Hong Yaowei's limbs. A quarter of an hour later, a crippled and blood-soaked person was carried out of the farm and thrown out of the door. leaving him to fend for himself. Lin Yongyi, Feng Mannion, you're the ones who harmed me. Hong Yaowei couldn't conceal the hatred in his eyes. His body trembled as he crawled forward, dragging out a long trail of blood on the ground. Suddenly, a black shadow landed beside him. Hong Yaowei raised his head to look, but before he could see the person's face clearly, his neck was slit by a sharp sword. The night was quiet, and the moon was as clear as water. Mo Yin sat sideways on the edge of the bed and reached out to pat the little one on the bed. Under the illumination of the moonlight, the little fellow hugged the chubby little white squirrel and fell into a deep slumber. The window frame moved slightly. Mo Yin reached out to help her tuck in the corner of the quilt. He got up and walked towards the door. With a flick of his sleeve, the candle flame followed his figure and gradually went out. Your Highness, Hong Yaowei has already been cleaned up. Hui Feng cupped his hands and murmured. Yes. Mo Yin responded indifferently. She raised her hand and gently closed the door. I want the information of everyone in the Hong family. Yes, Lin Yongyi is benevolent and righteous, but he is not decisive enough. Choose someone to support him. Yes. Hui Feng nodded slightly and watched as the crown prince left. He then turned to glance at the side room, and shortly after, he disappeared into the night with a single breath. Cuckoo! A black shadow glided across the night sky and sank into the moonlit night. The sleeping arbor seemed to have stirred and abruptly opened his eyes. He stared coldly at the muslin canopy above his head and stared blankly for a while. He abruptly jumped down from the bed barefoot. He arrived at the edge of the bed in a flash and gently lifted the curtain with his fingers. His gaze was clear as he gazed at the hazy night outside. Chapter 776. Under the night sky, a short and small figure stealthily crept up to the wooden prisoner carriage. Suddenly, she threw herself in front of the pillar and called out softly, Mississippi, Xiangqin, hurry and untie my ropes. Xiangqin heaved a sigh of relief and glanced at the 2 to 3 guards who had long fallen unconscious on the ground. She hastily went up and reached her hands through the wooden cage, hastily peeling off the ropes on Feng Manyun's body. Miss, where did you put your black rank pill? Hurry and take it out and consume it. Right. My black rank pill. Feng Manyun, who was sitting in the prisoner carriage, quickly took out a small round porcelain bottle from her chest pocket. She poured out that life-saving black rank pill and swallowed it in one gulp. Miss, these guards have all been knocked unconscious by me. They're fine now. Xiangqin, find the key and quickly release me. After the master and servant busied themselves for a while, Xiangqin finally took out the key to open the lock and helped Feng Manyun down from the prisoner carriage. Miss, is your arm all right? What could be wrong with me? Xiangqin's words seemed to have triggered an abnormal nerve in Feng Manyun, and she immediately wanted to howl loudly. Xiangqin hastily reached out to gag Feng Manyun's mouth. Miss, don't make a fuss. My medicine is only enough to knock out these people. If the assistant manager and the rest are summoned, we won't be able to escape. Feng Manyun quieted down and muttered to herself, as if she was talking to herself, but also as if she was consoling herself. I'm fine, my arm will be fine. That isn't a zombie at all. He hasn't undergone a zombie transformation. I will definitely be able to treat it myself. I can treat it. Miss, our carriage is over there. I'll help you over. Let's hurry and leave. No matter what injury it is, when we return to Celestial Medicine Valley, the old Valley Master will definitely take care of it. That's right. Feng Manyun nodded repeatedly, neurotically, before turning to Xiangqin with a dazed gaze. Xiangqin, when I return to Celestial Medicine Valley, I will definitely reward you well. Miss, I'm relieved as long as you're fine. The master and servant pair stealthily crept to their original carriage. Just as they were about to board, Feng Manyun raised her head neurotically and vigilantly gazed at the horizon. After a gurgling sound, something seemed to glide across the sky. Miss, it's only a few nighthawks. Don't worry, we can leave this place very soon. Xiangqin helped Feng Manyun into the carriage. Just as Feng Manyun bent over and lifted the curtain, She saw a contorted and stiff face abruptly closing in on her with its mouth wide open. Half an eyeball actually fell out of its socket, and its empty eye socket stared fixedly at Feng Mannion. Ah! Feng Mannion rolled out of the carriage in fright. Her originally injured arm snapped again with a crack from this toss. 3 or 4 strange people with stiff and twisted expressions crawled out of the car one after another, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws as they pounced at the master and servant. "Go away, go away!" Xiangqin screeched as she picked up a wooden stick and smashed it fiercely at the 2 strange people pouncing over. At the same time, screams and yells continuously rang out from several tents. The tent district was in a mess, and countless people rushed out of their tents in bewilderment. "Light the lanterns! Quickly light the lanterns!" The assistant manager jumped out of his tent and shouted loudly, "See you tomorrow." Chapter 777. What's going on? When the City Lord Manor's guards lit their torches and the assistant manager saw the scene in the shed area, he couldn't help but be shocked, cold sweat dripping down his forehead, only to see that the entire shed area was in chaos. Mutated people with stiff bodies and slow movements were everywhere, biting and tearing at the ordinary civilians they caught. Assistant manager. Not good. A guard hurriedly reported, "I don't know what's going on, but a portion of the injured people have all mutated." The injured people collectively mutated. This kind of thing had never been heard of before. This caught everyone off guard. Everyone was caught off guard. Many of the people living in the shed area were operation teams that went out to do missions. According to the rules, they had to stay in the shed area for 3 to 5 days before they could enter the city. Therefore, when the shed area became chaotic, the operation team members were the first to run out of their tents, spontaneously forming a battle line, and at the same time going forward to encircle and annihilate the mutated people. Of course, there were 1 or 2 operation teams that were caught off guard and attacked by their own team members. Hui Fan's Flying Rock operation team was one of the teams that were attacked by their own team members. Hui Ling's eyes were red, staring at 2 of her own team members who were firmly pressed down on the ground, constantly howling and howling, as if they had completely lost their mind. She cried and scolded. "How can it be like this? Our team didn't encounter any corpse puppets these few days. The injury on Old Who's leg was clearly scraped by the earth thorns. How can it be like this? He's clearly almost recovered. Press him down." Hui Fan raised his sword and strode forward, grabbing the hair of the team member who was howling nonstop. The sword in his hand didn't hesitate at all as he slashed towards Old Who's neck. "Captain, second brother, he has lost his mind. He's mutated. Leaving him alive will only harm us." Hui Fan's eyes were scarlet. He roared and decisively chopped off Old Who's head. The rest of the Flying Rock operation team members all cried out. "How can it be like this?" Hui Ling's tears were like a broken string of pearls rolling down. "Be careful not to get hurt." Hui Fan tightly clenched his fists, the veins on his neck popping out. I don't know why it's like this. But this situation, I don't think it's an exception. In short, pay attention to protect yourself." Those who had profound armaments had all activated their defensive barriers. If you don't have a Xian artifact, put on your armor. Everyone, pay attention. Boom! The tent door was suddenly broken by someone, and a gust of cold wind suddenly poured in. Roar! A few mutated humans with bulging eyeballs rushed in, baring their fangs. Their eyes were slightly bloodshot. Clang! One of the body cultivators smashed the metal rod in his hand into the face of one of the mutants without hesitation. The mutated human flew out and crashed into another person. Then, he rolled on the ground and roared as he pounced forward. The tent was torn apart by Hui Fan's sword, and the 12 surviving members of the Flying Rock squad all stood back to back, fending off the mutants that were pouncing on them from all directions. Why are all these people mutated? The assistant manager cried out in shock. Quick, quick! Ring the bell to warn the inner city. Quick! Assistant manager, deputy manager, a large group of people has appeared on the road ahead, and they're heading towards our city gate. Let us enter the city. Let us enter the city. A group of frightened commoners rushed towards the city gate in a panic. Chapter 778. They were too scared that a perfectly fine tent district would suddenly be filled with terrifying monsters. The common people only wanted to live, so they all rushed toward the city gate. Their emotions were surging and somewhat out of control, and everyone let out cries of alarm. Six-Jung lifted the tent flap and pierced the zombie that suddenly appeared in front of him with his sword. The long sword passed through its throat, emitting a gurgling sound. He pulled out his sword. There were no bloodstains on it, only some mud-like, unknown substance. Sixth young master, save me. The slightly plump Wu Xiao staggered and fell flat on his face. He got up, pulled up his pants, and strode towards Six-Jung. Just as he reached sixth young master, Wu Xiao stepped on a round log and kowtowed in front of sixth young master with a thud. The corner of sixth Zheng's mouth twitched. He stepped forward and lifted him up. Wu Xiaoan tugged at his belt, cutting a sorry figure. It looked like he'd been badly frightened by the zombie that suddenly attacked. He didn't know if he was unlucky or lucky, but when he went out to pee in the middle of the night, he drowsily heard a strange gnawing sound. Halfway through peeing, he turned around and saw a bloody mouth open at him. Wu Xiaoan was so frightened that his 3 souls and 7 spirits flew away. He even freaking peed on his hand. He didn't even have time to pull up his pants before running to sixth young master for help. Sixth young master. So scary. What's going on? Wu Xiao asked through chattering teeth. Where are the others? Sixth young master. Sixth young master. Wu Xiao's Earth Dragon operation team had a total of 17 members. Including him and sixth young master, there were only 13 people who ran out of the tent. Where are those 4 people? Wu Xiaoan roared as he pulled up his pants. The 4 of them are. A female team member wept and hung her head. Fuck. Wu Xiao was so angry that he threw away half of his belt and casually tied a knot on his pants. What are you crying for? Fuck these guys. Fuck them to death. However, Wu Xiaoan's cool didn't last more than 3 seconds. Move. Everyone move aside. At this time, a group of people clustered around a tall and handsome young master in snow-white clothes and a fox fur coat. Behind these people was a group of fleeing commoners, no less than 500 to 600 people. This way, there were even more people in the tent district. It's second dough. It is second young master dough. A few short exclamations came from Wu Xiaoan's side. The members of the Earth Dragon operation all looked at the young man in the snow-white robe in disbelief. Wu Xiaoan instantly cowered and hid behind Six-Jung. This second young master dough, who was renowned throughout the capital for being brimming with talent, reportedly resided in Celestial Medicine Valley all year round. Why would he appear at Bailon City's city gate today? Mingling in the crowd, Feng Manyun, who was using a piece of sackcloth to wrap her severed arm and half cover her head, also clearly saw this second young Sir Doe, and she couldn't help but tremble all over. Miss, why did young Sir come? Shang-Qin's pupils also contracted slightly, and she leaned close to Feng Manyun to ask in a low voice. This was the disciple that the old Valley Master was most proud of. It was said that he was the most promising person to become the next Valley Master of the Celestial Medicine Valley. Normally, Feng Manyun would only glance at him from afar. With her seniority and ranking, she simply wasn't allowed to get close to this young sir. The old Valley Master's granddaughter has also come. Feng Manyun slowly shrank into the crowd. You are this place's manager? Wenren Ningjing tilted her head and gazed innocently at the assistant manager, whose forehead was drenched in sweat. Open the city gate. Chapter 779. Clang, clang, clang. The warning bell rang, and everyone in the city was startled awake from their dreams. Mo Lian hurriedly put on her clothes and sprinted into her room in Arbor First. She couldn't help but be startled when she pushed open the door to take a look. The little lady had long finished dressing up. Under the waning light, she slowly turned her head around. Her white gown appeared elegant and natural under the moonlight. On the other side, City Lord Lin's eyelids were twitching wildly as he crawled out of bed. He hurriedly put on his clothes before rushing to the city gate. When he climbed up the city gate tower to take a look, his eyeballs nearly popped out of their sockets. The entire shed district was rather chaotic. Originally, there were close to 1,000 people squeezed into the shed district, and now, with the several hundred commoners that Second Doe had brought over, the passageway was almost full. Countless people crowded at the city gate, wailing, "Open the city gate! Open the city gate! Open the city gate!" A man carrying his old mother on his back shouted as he banged his head against the sturdy city gate. "City Lord, I beg you to be merciful. Let my child enter the city. City Lord." Lin Yongyi was a benevolent person to begin with, and he couldn't bear to see this kind of scene the most. Even his eyes were a bit red. However, he still had a trace of reason in the end. After hurriedly asking the soldiers guarding the city, he found out that the entire shed district had encountered an unforeseen event. All of the injured had actually mutated into zombies. As the city lord, not only did he have to empathize with the lives of these commoners outside the city, he also had to protect the lives of the several tens of thousands of people inside the city. "City Lord," Old Man Sun said gravely, "I'll send people to step up patrols inside the city. If the injured can all mutate into zombies while still alive, then what about inside the city?" Who knew if someone in the city had mutated after suffering a minor injury for no reason? Alarmed, Lin Yongyi hurriedly nodded and said, "Hurry, hurry! City Lord, for some reason, there's a large group of zombies 5 kilometers away heading towards Bailon City." Second Doe's deep and calm voice slowly rang out under the night sky. "City Lord should quickly open the city gate and let these innocent commoners in." Lin Yongyi's expression changed in alarm, and he clenched his fists. Is this true? While Second Doe was speaking, many small squads were currently fighting with the mutated people in the shed district outside the city. The defenseless civilians huddled together as much as possible to prevent themselves from being scratched by the zombies that suddenly pounced on them. "I'm not lying. What are you nagging about, old man? Hurry and open the city gates." Wenren Ningjing was so anxious that she stomped her feet. "As the city lord, you're responsible for the lives of the people. Are you going to watch as your people are torn to shreds by the corpse puppets?" Lin Yongyi's lips drooped as he clenched his fists. "No, we can't open the city gates. How would I know if any of these people have been scratched by the corpse puppet? Is there anyone mutating? If we let them rush into the city, wouldn't they bring disaster to all the people in the city?" "You damned old man." Wenren Ningjing pointed at the city gate tower and cursed, "The people inside are people, but aren't the people outside? How can you bear to watch them die without doing anything?" Lin Yongyi stiffened his neck and turned his head. "I can't make the decision on this matter." "Then tell the one who can make the decision to come out." Next to Wenren Ningjing, an arrogant and bossy girl shouted angrily, "Your Highness! Your Highness! Greetings to your Highness!" Greetings came one after another from below the city gate tower. It wasn't until Mo Yin's figure appeared on the city gate tower that Lin Yongyi wiped the sweat on his forehead and bowed towards Mo Yin with a wry smile. "Your Highness!" Chapter 780. It was already late at night. Arbor was draped in an ice silk mink fur cloak, a small hand warmer tucked in her sleeve. She slowly followed Mo Yin up the city gate tower. She glanced down the city gate tower, but her gaze was fixed on one spot, and her small hand involuntarily gripped the brick. Arbor's eyes suddenly brightened, and she muttered, "Little six." Among the crowd, the black-clothed youth's figure appeared extremely vigorous and outstanding. A long sword danced in his hand, chopping, slashing, and stabbing. His sword pierced the space between a corpse puppet's brows, and his body lightly leapt up, agile as a swimming dragon, his figure like a demon. After a few leaps, the youth had already arrived at a fatty's side, helping him block a corpse puppet that pounced from the side. The fatty broke out in a cold sweat, hastily reaching out to subconsciously grab at his slipping pants. He turned to Sixth Zheng and nodded gratefully. "Sixth young master, many thanks." "Jojo." Emolian didn't look at anyone else, her gaze landing on Arbor. Naturally, she immediately discovered her abnormality. Following her gaze, she saw a youth with decent skills, and her slender brows furrowed slightly. Arbor's gaze fixed on the youth with fluttering ink-black hair, and the corners of her lips involuntarily curled up. She truly didn't expect to see little Six in this kind of situation. Seeing him live so energetically, she didn't know what to think. Jojo. Alarm bells rang in Prince Mo's mind. What was going on? Jojo's eyes seemed to be glowing as he stared at that youth. This kind of Jojo was rarely seen. He had never seen Jojo's eyes light up when he stared at someone. It was as if he had discovered some kind of treasure. HM? Arbor turned her head in confusion and met the Crown Prince's eyes. At this time, second young Master Do's voice came from below the city gate tower. Do Fenghua greets Your Highness the Crown Prince. Only then did Prince Mo's gaze shift to below the city gate tower, indifferently sweeping over second Do's face. So it's the Do family's second son. Do family? Arbor was slightly startled. He quickly turned his gaze to Do Fenghua. It was a handsome young man dressed in plain white clothes. He had a graceful bearing and a noble temperament. It seemed to be quite different from the barbaric and shameless Do family in her impression. Why? Your Highness, please open the city gates and let the people outside the city in. Second, Do cupped his hands in salute and hastened to plead. If this Do's guess is correct, a large group of corpse puppets will surge over and about the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. Even though you're pleading for the people and everything you say is true, I'm afraid that you're wrong. However, my view is the same as the city lord's. Mo Lien said indifferently. Before confirming that these people are not infected, no one is allowed to enter the city. Your Highness. Cries could be heard from outside the city. Your Highness, please save us. Your Highness. Wenren Ningjing and one of her sisters beside her stomped their feet in anger, pointing at Mo Lien and cursing. What kind of country's heir apparent are you? You look on helplessly as your people suffer outside. What right do you have to be the crown prince? Shut up. Arbor's gaze turned cold as she angrily shouted. Her crisp voice, wrapped in a deterrent force, immediately suppressed all the chaotic clamor. Everyone raised their heads and looked at her in a daze. You're not allowed to slander the crown prince. You're even more not allowed to scold him. Arbor pointed at Wenren Ningjing and Wenren Ningjing, her gaze suddenly stern. Chapter 781. Who are you? Wenren Ningjing shouted, her eyebrows furrowed. You don't have a right to know. Arbor raised his hand with a cold expression, and the crow repeating crossbow extended from his sleeve, suddenly aiming in Wenren Ningjing's direction. What are you doing? Wenren Ningjing cried out in alarm, hugging her head and shrinking her neck. She only felt a rush of wind blow past her ear, and the arrow seemed to have hit something in an instant, and the sound of something falling to the ground came from behind her. Wenren Ningjing turned her head and finally saw clearly. It turned out that one of the commoners in the group had already quietly mutated, grabbing towards the back of her head. However, he was sent flying by an arrow from the little girl in the city gate tower, directly piercing through his head, making him deader than he could be. The city gate tower was at least 300 meters away from here. With this kind of arm strength and eyesight, it instantly caused the area outside the city gate tower to be so silent that even a pin drop could be heard. Look at you motley crew, stray dogs. You actually have the face to scold others? Turn around and take a look. How many of you are actually fighting? Arbor sneered with extreme mockery. If you were the crown prince, you'd probably be so scared that you wouldn't even dare to go up the city gate tower. Prince Mo turned to look at his Jojo with a grin. The little girl's wholehearted protection caused the trace of displeasure that had arisen in His Highness the Crown Prince's heart to instantly fly away. Look, his Jojo was the most protective of him. Your Highness, it was this Do who didn't think things through. Do Fenghua recovered his wits and hurriedly said, but there are close to 10,000 zombies gathered nearby. If we don't open the city gate, then? Do you think this is feasible? Time is of the essence right now, and we can't check them one by one. Would Your Highness please open up an independent area in the city and let all of us enter first before checking them one by one? Your Highness can send some guards to watch us. This way, if there are any unexpected situations, we can react in time. 10,000 zombies. Second young Master Do's words startled City Lord Lin so much that he immediately jumped up. Second young Master Do, are you speaking the truth? Only more, not less. Second Do raised his head to look at Prince Mo. May your Highness please make a decision. Looks like there'll be a bloody battle today. Mo Yin said coldly. Second Do, your suggestion is also pertinent. Let's do that for now. Lin Yongyi. Thank you, your Highness. Second Do let out a sigh of relief and turned to look at Wenren Ningjing. Yes, your Highness. Lin Yongyi immediately ordered 300 soldiers to descend from the city gate tower. Then, he ordered people to turn the winch and pull open the city gate. He drove the commoners outside the city to a small plaza near the city gate tower to watch over them. Miss, are we going in or not? Xiang Qin was confused. Previously, they had risked their lives to get out of the city. Who would have thought that they would have to return to the city in less than a night? What the hell was he doing? Are you stupid? Of course we have to enter. Feng Manyun casually picked up a cloak and wrapped herself inside, twitching slightly with a contorted face. She didn't want to stay outside the city to be torn apart and eaten raw by those ugly zombies. Miss, but what if someone discovers your injuries? Stop talking nonsense. Let's go in first. Enter the city. After Six Zheng cleaned up the last zombie beside him, he grabbed the hand of a team member next to him and pushed him into the crowd. Second Do and Wenren Ningjing's group also stood at the back of the crowd, not in a hurry to enter the city. At this time, when their gazes met, Second young Master Do nodded at Six Zheng. Sixth young Master Zheng. Chapter 782. Six Zheng cast a sidelong glance at Second young Master Do before nodding, slightly in agreement. Suddenly, a very tall and sturdy zombie darted out from behind a dilapidated tent where Six Zheng was standing, pouncing towards Six Zheng's head like a tiger. The distance was too close for Six Zheng to react in time. Wenren Ningjing hastily pulled Second young Master Do's arm and hastily retreated several steps, shouting, "Senior brother, be careful." Actually, that zombie was still some distance away from Second young Master Do. Moreover, it was pouncing in Sixth Zheng's direction, so it couldn't harm her senior brother at all. If Wenren Ningjing was willing to help Sixth young Master Do, his crisis would be resolved immediately. However, Wenren Ningjing only had eyes for her senior brother and no one else. Boom! In the nick of time, an arrow from the city gate tower directly pierced through the zombie's head, nailing it to the tent behind it. The night wind assaulted the city gate tower. A plain-clothed figure was elegant and exquisite, her figure snowy and icy, separated by the boundless night. Sixth Zheng turned his head and gazed into the depths of the little girl's ice-cold eyes. Those were a pair of clear and emotionless eyes. They were like two deep, dry wells, without ripples or waves, expressionless like a wooden carving. For some reason, Six Zheng felt his heart twitch slightly, as if something had been triggered. When he wanted to take another look, he saw that the little girl's figure had already disappeared from the city gate tower. Everyone rushed into the city, and the soldiers dispatched by Lin Yongyi hurried to the small plaza. Everyone followed the flow into the city, except for two people who came against the flow. Arbor released several crow-gold arrows with his crow-repeating crossbow, instantly sending several zombies bearing their fangs and brandishing their claws after the crowd flying. It was truly killing one person every 10 steps. His expression was as cold as frost. Everyone who passed by the crown prince and the little girl stopped in their tracks in a daze and looked at them blankly. Then, they were pushed by the people behind them and ran with the flow. Second Do, Six Zheng, and the others were the last to enter the city gate. At the same time, under Lin Yongyi's loud shout, the city guards had already started turning the capstan in the opposite direction again, closing the heavy city gate once more. After Sixth Zheng dragged the panting Wu Xiao in and jumped through the city gates, the last zombie was shot out of the city by Arbor's crow-gold arrow, and the city gates slowly closed. Sixth Zheng panted slightly, and his somewhat dazed gaze met Arbor's expressionless little face. Little 6. Xiao Mu slowly lowered the arm that was holding the crow repeating crossbow. Her gaze fixated on the bewildered 6 young, and her lips curled into a smile that had been missing for a long time. Mo Lien was startled. She immediately stepped forward and reached out to grasp Arbor's slightly cold hand. Her scrutinizing gaze then fell on 6 Zheng's face. Her looks were considered top-notch, and her skills were passable. However, Duan Yu, Sito Yi, and even those 2 from the Qin family were all very outstanding people. Yet he had never seen his Jojo show such a tender and affectionate expression toward any of them. She even directly and intimately called him Little 6. What was going on with this gaze that clearly carried a trace of reminiscence? Mo Lien was very certain that this was her darling's first time seeing this 6th young Master Zheng. However, what the hell was this inexplicable sense of familiarity between the 2 of them? This caused the Crown Prince's heart to fluctuate wildly, as if it was being scratched by a cat. He looked at 6th young Master Zheng, as if he was facing a great enemy. Crown Princess? Huifeng also glanced at Arbor in astonishment. Chapter 783. Arbor snapped out of her daze and finally realized that her behavior was a bit strange. Little 6 must have also thought that she was quite strange. She then collected her thoughts and switched to an expressionless face. Arbor nodded and said, "Time to sleep." Huifeng, Crown Princess, your ability to forcefully change the topic is improving. What time is it now? Yet you're still thinking about sleeping. Can you sleep? Your Highness! City Lord Lin anxiously ran over with his men and hastily saluted. Just as 2nd young Master Do said, a large group of zombies has arrived 2 li outside the city. There are over 10,000 of them. Huifeng, take a team and go up the city gate tower to hold them off. The Crown Prince ordered decisively. Lightning, go back with the Crown Princess and protect the Crown Princess well. Lin Yongyi passed down the order to gather all the mystic cultivators, body cultivators, superhumans, and so on in the city. Gather everyone who can fight near the city gate tower. The Crown Prince issued several orders before turning to Arbor and saying softly, "Jojo, go sleep if you're tired." Everyone, Your Highness, this style of yours, don't you think it's a bit strange? Arbor waved his small paw and really turned to return to his room. Lightning, along with a few shadow guards, naturally followed him like a shadow. Lin Yongyi and the others were tongue-tied, but they didn't know what to say. Lin Yongyi, you still need to send people to watch over the small plaza. Continue the inspection. Those who have no problems can enter the inner city, and transfer those who can fight to the city gate tower. The Crown Prince was referring to the 1,000-odd people from the Tent District who had just entered the city. Among them, there were also many small operations teams that could be put to use. Wenren Ningjing was the first to be unable to continue watching. She bit her lip and interrupted in displeasure. Your Highness ordered everyone to go up the city gate tower, but does your Crown Princess have special rights? That's right, everyone needs to participate in the battle. Your Crown Princess can even go back to her room to sleep? This was too strange. This Crown Prince was so overprotective that he didn't care about the consequences. It was an eye-opener. The woman beside Wenren Ningjing was called Kong Romiao. As one of the top 50 disciples of the Celestial Medicine Valley, she originally didn't have the qualifications to stand beside 2nd young Master Do. However, she had a close relationship with the granddaughter of the old Valley Master, Wenren Ningjing, so she had this privilege. Kong Rumio was very obedient and protective of Wenren Ningjing. As long as Wenren Ningjing opened her mouth, Kong Rumio, this brain-dead fan, would be everywhere. At this moment, Kong Rumio crossed her arms and looked provocatively at Arbor, who was walking past her. She snorted. The Crown Princess turned to look at Kong Rumio and the others. She frowned and said, "Where are the Crown Princess guards? Why didn't anyone subdue her when she provoked the Crown Princess?" Huifeng, the Prince Mo, silently held his forehead. Lightning's group had already appeared the moment the Crown Princess finished speaking. 2 black-clothed youths immediately twisted Kong Rumio's arms and forced her kneel on the ground. Ah! Kong, Rumio shrieked. Wenren Ningjing also jumped in fright and reflexively took 2 steps back. What is the crime of offending the crown princess? Arbor asked impatiently. Kill. The expressions of the people from the Celestial Medicine Valley abruptly changed. Second young Master Do hastily stepped forward and saluted. Crown Princess, please calm your anger. This humble one's junior sister comes from the Celestial Medicine Valley and hasn't been restrained by the secular world since she was young. Please forgive this humble one, Crown Princess. Chapter 784. So long-winded. Arbor glared at second young Sir Do. As their eldest senior brother, you don't know how to restrain your disciples and have the audacity to offend the Crown Princess. It's simply baffling. Everyone, among your disciples, how many of them can be of use? Have them step forward. Second Do, why did he feel that this Crown Princess was a bit adorable? Her manner of speech was straightforward and strange. Those of the Crown Princess's royal guards who have the guts to oppose the zombie army step forward. Voila! The Hidden Knight Pavilion's members and the 100 hidden guards hidden in the shadows all jumped out, their movements especially synchronized. Do you see that? This is the difference. The Crown Princess rolled her eyes at the people from Celestial Medicine Valley. Lin Yongyi and company were unexpectedly speechless. When they turned to look at the Crown Prince, they saw the Crown Prince holding his forehead as he stifled a chuckle. Cough. Huifeng coughed lightly to remind his Crown Prince. Prince Mo walked up with a grin to grasp Arbor's small hand. That's right, that's right. Do you see? The Crown Princess has several hundred subordinates who are willing to risk their lives for her to oppose the zombie army. You don't have anyone, so you naturally have to go yourselves. That's right. Not a single one of these Celestial Medicine Valley idiots understood her words. That was exactly what she meant. She had money and people, so why couldn't she first go catch up on sleep to make herself feel better? Why did she have to force herself to endure her unbearably sleepy body to fight the zombies over there? Was she stupid? Only the Crown Prince could understand her meaning. A bunch of idiots. She couldn't be bothered to waste her breath with them. Jojo, I'll send you back to your room to sleep. His darling must be unbearably sleepy, but even her overbearing appearance was just as adorable. That's right, these insensible things didn't know that his darling was still growing. How could she not properly grow up? The Crown Prince carried Arbor back to the side room and settled her down before leading the others back to the city gate tower. Half a kilometer away from Bailon City, several prisoner carriages were frantically speeding forward. There were 5 to 6 people imprisoned in each prisoner carriage. There were men, women, old, and young, and all of them were shrieking with terrified expressions. It wasn't horses that were pulling the carriage, but 2 giant hyenas. These hyenas ran much faster than horses, but they were very brave when they ran. The prison carriage kept shaking, causing the people in the cage to retch. In the beginning, there were more than a dozen of these prisoner carriages, but when they fled all the way to Bailon City's entrance, there were only 4 to 5 of them left. The others had already overturned halfway and were savagely devoured by the zombies that were chasing after them. These prisoners still felt like they were in a dream. Originally, they were all locked up in the prison. They didn't know what was going on, but when they opened their eyes, they found themselves on a fleeing prison cart with a large group of zombies following closely behind. They were getting closer and closer to Bailon City's city gate. They cried aloud and waved their arms vigorously from their cages to the rows of dark figures on the battlements for help. They didn't want to die. They hoped to be locked up in the prison again. Even if they had to eat pig swill every day for several years, it was still better than being inexplicably torn apart and eaten by these zombies. Your Highness. Second young Master Do walked to Emolion's side and whispered, I saw it on the way here. These people seem to be the bait for wild beasts. If this Do's guess isn't wrong, someone deliberately lured them to Bailon City. It's the end of the month, so stop hiding and quickly vote. I'll give you more monthly votes tomorrow, moi. Chapter 785. At first, I thought it was extremely strange. Why would someone go to such great lengths to use some prisoners to lure a large number of zombies to Balon City? Second young Sir Doe turned his head and glanced indifferently at Prince Imo. This Doe only understood when this Doe saw the Crown Prince for the first time. It turns out that these people were targeting Your Highness the Crown Prince. Prince Mo's icy lips pursed into a thin line as he nodded apathetically. Did Second Doe discover anything else? Second Doe nodded slightly. Where did these prisoners come from? If this Doe's guess isn't wrong, these prisoners should have been transferred out from the Mo Kingdom Capital's dungeon. The Supreme Court only imprisons high officials of third rank and above, as well as the king's relatives. Even if these people are imprisoned, no one dares to touch them in the slightest. Second Doe analyzed. Therefore, this Doe guesses that these prisoners were probably transferred out from the Ministry of Justice's dungeon. At this time, the Ministry of Justice is probably already in complete chaos. Second Doe's guess wasn't wrong. At this time, the Minister of Justice, Mao Kongfu, was kneeling inside the Great King's royal study. He had just reported that a large number of prisoners had escaped from the Ministry of Justice's dungeon, and he didn't even dare to breathe loudly. The Great King of the Mo Kingdom only felt his eyelids twitching madly, and he felt like something bad was about to happen. Unfortunately, the people he sent out hadn't returned yet. Someone stole your waist tag and released 100 prisoners without permission. The old king was so angry that he slapped the desk. This is such a big thing, and you didn't realize it until now. What are you doing? Mao Kongfu took off his official hat and held it in his hands as he knelt on the ground with his head bowed. Great King, it is this subject's dereliction of duty, but this subject requests the Great King to give this subject a chance to redeem himself by meritorious service and escort these prisoners back. They've already escaped for so long. How are you going to escort them back? The commander of the royal guards, Hui Feng, led He Tian to the royal study in large strides and knelt on one knee in salute. Greetings to the Great King. Come in. The old Great King hurriedly waved at them. Hui Feng, He Tian, hurry up and bring 2,000 men to assist the Ministry of Justice. Capture all the escaped criminals. Great King. A dark shadow appeared in the Great King's study. He was the closest secret guard to the Great King, who had been sent out to gather information not long ago. How is it? How is it? Tell me quickly. The shadow guard bowed before replying. Your Majesty, the shadow guard is here. I've already sent people to investigate. We discovered that these escapees were all fleeing in the direction of Balon City. Bastard! The old Great King roared. Hui Feng, Great King, your subordinate hasn't finished yet. The secret guard hurriedly added, your subordinate has investigated. This group of people has alarmed many zombies within a radius of 50 kilometers. Currently, more than 10,000 zombies have gathered and are chasing after them to Balon City. What? The old Great King jumped up in shock, as if his but had been roasted by fire. Wasn't Balon City? Wasn't that where his royal son was? Royal father, royal father. The Great King's son, Mo Jiao, had really come at the right time. He ran into the royal study with great acting and started bawling while hugging the table leg. Royal father, royal father. This subject heard that sixth royal brother has been surrounded by a large group of zombies in Balon City. This subject requests royal father's permission to allocate 3,000 elite troops to this subject. This subject wants to personally head to Balon City to rescue royal brother. Royal father. Chapter 786. Scram. The Great King gave the Great King's son, Mo Jiao, a kick that sent him tumbling to the ground. The tear stains on his face had yet to dry as he looked up at his old father in a daze, unable to comprehend what was going on. The old Great King picked up a ruler in passing and smashed it at Mo Jiao's back. Do you think that father doesn't know that you have a belly full of cunning plots? Do you think that your father is a dotard? The Great King's son was stupefied. He had come over at the right time to express his attitude and express his excellent moral character of cherishing and protecting his younger brother. Yet he still incurred his old father's disdain. If this wasn't called dotard, then what was? Royal father, royal father. The old great king smacked the ruler twice on Mo Jiao's back. You came to father at this time to show off your cleverness. You even said that you didn't find someone to secretly release those people from the Ministry of Justice's prison. Mo Jiao, what did I do? Don't think that your royal father is dotard. That little scheme of yours? How can we not know? Why do you want to lead troops to Bailon City? Are you there to save your royal brother? Or to harm him? The Minister of Justice, Mao Kongfu, hurriedly crawled forward and reached out to stop the great king's rough ruler. Great king, this matter shouldn't have anything to do with the great king's son. I'm afraid this official's waist token was stolen by the infamous bandit Ding Ting Ding. What? The old great king turned around with the ruler in hand and stared sharply at Mao Kongfu. Didn't you say just now? Mao Kongfu was speechless. He had indeed wanted to conceal this matter at first, because how would it be honorable if he revealed it? Ding Ting Ding had sent him a letter stating that he would steal his personal waist token within 24 hours. He had already put up a 360-degree defense without any blind spots. Who would have thought that when the time came, his waist token would disappear without a trace? Sob, sob, sob. He really didn't want to tell the great king that the waist tag was stolen by Ding Ting Ding. But now that he saw the great king angrily scolding the great king's son, if he continued to hide this matter, it would escalate into a conflict between father and son. Father. When the great king's son heard this, he immediately burst into tears and snot. I am really innocent. This son naturally wants to lead troops to Bailon City to rescue Six's brother. This son can swear to the heavens that this is absolutely not a lie. Did she take him for a fool? Even if he really wanted to find an opportunity to get rid of the crown prince, he couldn't possibly lead an army to kill the crown prince right under his father's nose. How dare you say you're not an old fool? What a fucking muddle-headed old man. The great king's son inwardly cursed endlessly. At this moment, he couldn't help but grimace from the pain and anger on his back from being beaten by the ruler. This damned old man. They were both sons, but the difference between the son of the legitimate wife and the son of a concubine was like heaven and earth. Ever since he was young, this old man had cared for the crown prince in every possible way, only believing and doting on him. His heart had already deviated to the northwest desert. It was only then that the old great king coughed awkwardly, knowing that he had wrongly blamed Mo Jiao. He tossed the ruler onto the ground and said resentfully to Gong Chong and beside him, "Why haven't you summoned a physician from the royal physician building to examine the great king's son's injuries?" Mo Jiao, father knows what you're thinking. The old great king's lips drooped as he coldly said, "Let us tell you. The crown prince simply doesn't care about the things that you're so attached to. This is the most fundamental difference between the two of you." Mao Kongfu broke out in a cold sweat. He didn't expect that the old great king would actually lecture his eldest son in front of him today. You father and son quarrel with each other on a daily basis, so why don't you do it behind closed doors? As a subject, how could he endure hearing this kind of words? Chapter 787. Hui Feng He Tian. This subject is here. Immediately bring 2,000 men and head to Bailon City to rescue them. We solemnly obey the great king's order. The great king's son, Mo Jiao, failed to act obedient and was beaten up by his old father instead. Suppressing his belly full of anger, he quietly clenched his fists and left the royal study. The most fundamental difference. They were all sons, but royal father only favored the crown prince and didn't favor the other sons. This was the most fundamental difference between them. Royal father simply didn't know that every time he mentioned the crown prince, his old eyes seemed to glow with pride. That was a gaze filled with extreme pride for this son of his. He said that the most fundamental difference between them and the crown prince was that they were wholeheartedly attached to power and position, while the crown prince didn't favor them at all. By holding the crown prince up so high, wasn't he afraid that if the crown prince were to fall one day, his body would shatter and his bones would be consigned to eternal damnation? Why was it that the crown prince was good in every way, while his other sons were as worthless as dog shit. Mo Jiao heavily punched the corridor pillar and left in a huff. Just as he walked out of the Great King's palace, he saw the Great King's second consort, Shu Quan, standing on the side of the road with a slight smile, waiting for him to come out under the moonlight. The Great King's son, Mo Jiao's heart eased slightly, and he felt a bit better. With a smile on his face, he went up to support the Great King's second consort's hand and asked, "King Consort, why have you come?" This concubine couldn't feel at ease after waiting for his eldest highness to return for a long time. So this concubine simply came to the king's palace's entrance to wait for his highness. Sigh. The Great King's son, Mo Jiao, sighed and said, "King Consort, you were right. As expected, Royal Father wasn't willing to delegate military authority to me. He is very wary of me in his heart. I don't know if it's because second brother's previous matter has angered the Great King's nerves. I think that other than sixth brother, he doesn't trust anyone else right now." The Great King's second consort hastily stretched out her hand and secretly tugged at the Great King's son's sleeve. How could such words be spouted so casually? They had just left the king's palace and were surrounded by the Great King and Queen's spies. Her husband was too reckless. The Great King's consort sighed. She tidied her hair and went up on her tiptoes to fix the Great King's collar. "Your Highness, your face looks a bit pale. What's wrong?" The Great King's son swallowed his anger. He supported the Great King's wife and said, "We'll talk about it when we get back." "All right." The Great King's concubine nodded with a smile. She glanced at a dark corner from the corner of her eyes and saw a slender shadow flash by. A glint flashed across her eyes. Was it Queen Zhao's informant, Consort Zheng's, or another concubine's? It seemed that the news of her husband being reprimanded in the imperial study today would soon spread throughout the imperial court. The Great King's son's estate wouldn't necessarily be any better off than the second prince's estate. Shu Quan sighed. She had already told him not to enter the palace at this time. But how could her husband listen to other people's advice? Besides, he had wasted a great opportunity to sell a favor to the crown prince. If her husband had listened to her advice and secretly dispatched people to Bailon City to rescue his royal brother. After Bailon City's crisis had been resolved, he could then quietly leak the news and divulge this matter to the Great King and the crown prince. How perfect would that be? Yet this boorish fellow only had eyes for that bit of military authority in the South Camp and wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to win it over. How could the Great King be willing to let him have his way? Just as the Great King and his wife left the king's palace, someone went to the Queen's central palace to pass on a message. Chapter 788. Sitting in front of the dressing mirror, Queen Zhao sneered. "My son just got caught up in Bailon City's crisis, yet someone immediately couldn't sit still. Could it be that they think there's no one left in our Zhao family?" Earlier, the queen had swiftly summoned her younger brother, Zhao Sheng, into the palace. At this moment, Zhao Sheng should have already brought his two sons to Bailon City to rescue the king. Green Mammy, who was gently massaging Her Majesty the Queen's shoulders, couldn't help but interject, "Isn't that so? Your Majesty doesn't need to worry. His Highness the Crown Prince is very capable, so how could such a small matter stump him? On the other hand, the Crown Princess..." Green Mammy paused, and Haxiang, who had just entered with a cup of tea, walked to the Queen's side with light steps. She docilely placed the teacup in front of the Queen and silently stood behind her. Queen Zhao's brows creased slightly. Whenever Green Mammy talked about her daughter-in-law, she would have a headache, and that stoic face would pop up in her mind for no reason. Green Mammy glanced at the Queen out of the corner of her eye, and her lips curled into a secret smile as she continued. "This old servant heard that the Crown Princess's child is very playful. The reason why the Crown Prince left for Bailon City without saying goodbye this time might be because the Crown Princess had whispered something into the Crown Prince's ear." Queen Zhao pursed her lips in displeasure. Last time, because the Crown Prince had accompanied that lass from the Qiao family back to her parental home, he had encountered an assassination attempt on the way back. This time, It was also because of that lass's willful and rash actions that the crown prince was in danger. Moreover, no matter how she looked at that stoic face, she just couldn't bring herself to like it. When she recalled how Consort Chung had brought her daughters-in-law over to pay respects to her 2 days ago, she became even more envious of other families' daughters-in-law. That eldest lass of the Shu family, Shu Quan, had been well-educated and well-mannered since childhood, and she had also watched her grow up. Now that she had a son and 2 daughters, her belly was quite capable. Secondary Consort Zhang, who was by the great king's son's side, also looked reasonable and had a concubine's daughter. Vice Consort Wu, who had been taken in less than half a year ago, was the concubine's daughter Wu Xiaoli, who was ranked second in the Wu family. When she came to pay her respects, she was already pregnant. Perhaps she was about to give birth to Consort Cheng's 5th grandson. This made Queen Zhao's eyes burn with envy. Compared to her 2 disappointing sons, Queen Zhao sighed repeatedly. Her youngest son was already 13 years old. He was like a wild horse that had broken free of its reins. He was always out in the wild and was nowhere to be seen. The big one was even more ridiculous. In his early 20s, he had never been close to women. Oh, he was close now, but the one closest to him was a little stoic. As the crown prince, he had no children. Wasn't this just throwing his weakness to the enemy? It was no wonder that the imperial censors were so long-winded. Queen Zhao set down the ivory finer in annoyance and cast a sidelong glance at Green Mammy. Between Commandery Princess In and the future Crown Princess, who do you think is more suitable for His Highness? It's just that the Crown Princess is rather young and has grown up among the common folk since she was young, so her personality is a bit more casual. Elderly Nanny Hua Xian, who had lifted the curtain and walked to the Queen's side with a chuckle. Hua Xian very naturally took the finer that the Queen had placed in front of the dressing mirror and gently combed the Queen's hair. Commandery Princess In has been raised by Her Majesty the Queen Dowager since she was young, so there's naturally nothing to say about her etiquette. However, oh my, just say what you want to say. The Queen cast a glance at elderly Nanny Huashuan's hesitant expression and couldn't resist urging. There aren't any outsiders here, so what can't you say? Yes, then this old servant will speak frankly. Chapter 789. After all, Commandery Princess Ian's parents died when she was young. Speaking of which, she's also a person with a bitter fate. Elderly Nanny Huaxian docilely combed Her Majesty the Queen's long hair as she commented softly. If it weren't for Her Majesty the Queen Dowager taking pity on her, as the descendant of a martyr and conferring the title of Commandery Princess on her behalf, she wouldn't have been able to survive this long. At this time, her days in the Marquis of Suin's estate are probably not easy. Although her uncle was bestowed the title of Marquis of Suin by His Majesty's grace. However, although the Marquis of Suin's estate has many heirs, they are all good-for-nothings. Queen Zhao nodded. On the other hand, Green Mammy pouted indignantly when the 2 people weren't paying attention. Now that you mention it, that's true. Ian is also not a very auspicious person. How could she be worthy of her outstanding son? Queen Zhao was pondering that her son was not young anymore, yet he was still childless. Seeing how small that little stoic was, she reckoned that her son would need to raise her for another 2 years before they could consummate their marriage. Could it be that she had to let her precious son watch over her for these 2 years? How could she do that? She couldn't bear to. Moreover, she desperately wanted to hold a grandchild. Regardless of whether it was a legitimate grandchild or a concubine's grandchild, it couldn't be better if she could give her a grandchild to hold. As a result, Queen Zhao secretly racked her brains to take in 2 secondary consorts for her precious son. Look at how Consort Cheng's son already had 2 secondary consorts. Her own son was the crown prince of the great Mo kingdom, second only to the king, so why couldn't he have a secondary consort? Prince Mo thought that his mother had already stopped, but he didn't expect that this pig of a teammate would continue to secretly drag on. Behind his legs, the eldest miss of the Mu family's eldest branch, Mu Qianqian, is also not bad. Her small face is snow white and her smile, is also sweet. Unlike that expressionless stoic face. Her Majesty the Queen muttered to herself. It's just that she didn't conform to etiquette at the palace banquet last time. I'll just have to teach her the rules in the future. Ian is also not bad. The eminent monk of the Honghai Temple had even read her fortune, saying that she would have many children and many blessings. Although she didn't seem to have a good life in the first half of her life, she might be a good wife who could bring good fortune to her husband. With her status as a concubine, it wouldn't be a loss of face to the Empress Dowager. The more Queen Zhao spoke, the more spirited she became. Shu family's fourth young lady, Shu Hui, is 18 this year. The last time I saw her, she was as pretty as a flower bud. The two girls from the Dou family were also not bad. They were the famous twin sisters in the capital. The one from the Duan clan is not bad, and the one from the Qin clan. Oh my Empress. Old Nanny Huaxian put down the fine-toothed comb and looked at the queen helplessly. Even if those girls you mentioned were as beautiful as fairies, it's useless. Your Highness doesn't like any of them. The queen immediately snorted like a deflated balloon. Why is my son so stubborn? That little stoic was so tiny. What exactly was so good about her? Your Highness, you've seen how much His Highness likes the crown princess. Huaxian whispered into the queen's ear, her eyes flickering with the wisdom of an old nanny. We can't cause a rift with His Highness because of this. The affection between mother and son. The green mammy still wanted to follow, but she had no choice but to halt her steps after Huaxian cast her a cold glance from the corner of her eye. Moreover, Her Majesty the Empress Dowager's heart aches for that commandery princess in. Do you think it's a good idea to place her beside the crown prince? His Highness and commandery princess in have known each other since they were young. There hasn't been much between them for so many years, yet you insist on getting involved with them. Won't His Highness be disgusted? Chapter 790. Nonsense, Queen Zhao retorted indignantly. I see that child Ian's eyes light up every time she sees our son, and she can't shift her gaze away. How can you say that it's nothing? Oh my queen consort. When your family's His Highness goes out, he looks like a jade tree facing the wind, which girls' eyes don't shine when they see him. Huaxian said with her mouth twitching. That stoic face doesn't light up. Speaking of this, the queen got angry. She just felt that that little stoic didn't value her precious son enough. She kept a stoic face in front of her husband all day long, and her gaze never lingered on her son. She treated her son like a radish instead of a vegetable. It was simply infuriating. Huaxian, that after all this, it was just that the mother-in-law felt that her daughter-in-law didn't value her son enough. Elderly Nanny Huaxian could completely understand Queen Zhao's mentality. Indeed, such an outstanding person like His Highness would attract pursuers wherever he went. The crown princess's attitude was improper. Cough, but the crown princess was still young. Perhaps she hadn't been enlightened yet. Your Majesty, this old servant advises you not to meddle in the young couple's affairs. Don't even think about that secondary consort selection. Look at how much His Highness cherishes your stoic-faced daughter-in-law. Queen Zhao abruptly glared at elderly Nanny Huaxian. Huaxiang, who was following beside her. Nanny, why did you also call her stoic-faced? Cough, cough, this old servant's meaning is, if you go and start some secondary consort selection, His Highness definitely won't like it. When the time comes and he kicks up a fuss with you, the one who will lose face is still you. Elderly Nanny Huaxian coughed twice as she explained. Truly, a grown son can't be controlled by his mother. Queen Zhao went to sleep in a huff. Wasn't she just feeling sorry for her precious son? Her son actually didn't appreciate it. Huaxiang secretly pursed her lips into a smile and quickly served Queen Zhao to rest. After a good night's sleep in arbor, the first glimmer of dawn had already appeared when she opened her eyes. She couldn't help but sigh when she touched her lower body. No wonder she couldn't open her eyes at night and was unbearably exhausted. It turned out that her first period since her rebirth had come. She had already prepared a clean cotton cloth a while ago, so she was not caught off guard this time. However, his body was still very tired, and his head was still a little dizzy. The lower part of his body was wet, and it was not very comfortable. He got up and fiddled around for a while, then put on a clean cotton cloth and changed his clothes. Murmurs came from outside the door. Arbor quickly ran to the door, put his hand on the door, and muttered with a red face, "You're not allowed to come in." "Jojo, you're awake?" Yin was surprised when she was stopped from opening the door. "What's wrong?" "It's okay." Arbor still didn't let go of the door and shouted, "Ask Xiao Yao to come in." "You forgot that Xiao Yao stayed in the Mo Kingdom capital and didn't come with us." Yin was at a loss, unable to understand what was going on with her little miss. Then call any maid in. After saying that, Arbor thought again. Right now, the maids and guards were probably busy elsewhere, so she said dejectedly, forget it. I'll do it myself." Her small hand moved past the door. Just as she turned around, she heard a soft sound from behind the door. Prince Mo had already pushed open the door. "Jojo." Yin saw her complexion at a glance. "Why is your face so pale?" "Jojo, are you not feeling well?" He picked her up and walked to the bed. "Do you want to sleep a while more?" Arbor was so angry that she wanted to bite him. She covered his eyes with one hand and shouted, "You're not allowed to look, not allowed to look." Chapter 791. Her bed hadn't been properly tidied up yet. She was about to die from embarrassment. Hateful brat, hateful brat, hateful brat. Even though he wasn't allowed to look, the Crown Prince's sharp gaze still caught sight of it. He was momentarily dazed as he lowered his head to look at his little lady. "It's fine, Jojo. Don't be scared. I'll go find an old nanny to teach you." Arbor bit his chin. "Hateful brat. You're not allowed to find anyone. Bring me clean bed sheets and blankets from the cabinet." A moment later, the Crown Prince helped the little lady clean the bed. He foolishly looked at the little lady who was lying on the bed and turning her head away from him. "Jojo, do you want to eat something? I'll go prepare it for you." "How's the situation outside?" Arbor expressionlessly asked with his back facing a certain someone. "Oh, the city is under siege." "How can you be so calm when you're under siege?" "You." Arbor turned to glare at him in bewilderment. "Is the city really under siege?" MHM, it's under siege. There are a lot of zombies blocking Balon City's city gate. There are many more zombies than the ones we encountered in Chinatown back then." Arbor really wanted to whip something and beat this joker to death. "Your tone is so relaxed. Do you look like you're under siege and in dire straits?" "Then what should we do?" "It's fine. Lin Yongyi is here." Yin's words made Arbor roll his eyes in exasperation. "Are you sure City Lord Lin isn't secretly crying in a corner right now?" "Jojo, wait a moment. I'll cook some porridge for you. Drink some before you sleep." Yin hurried out after saying that. Arbor didn't even have time to call out to him. After a while, Xiao Mu was still in a daze when she felt Yin pick her up. His body was very warm, causing her originally icy limbs to involuntarily crawl over on their own accord. She hugged his waist and buried her small face in his embrace as she nuzzled against him. He stroked her forehead with his hand and fed her some porridge before stuffing a warm hand warmer into her arms. He softly muttered a few words into her ear, but Arbor didn't hear him clearly and didn't know when he left. When she woke up, she felt much more refreshed. She raised her hand to touch the hand warmer on her stomach. It was still warm, so Yin reckoned that he had changed the charcoal pies midway. She got out of bed, changed her clothes, opened the door, took a look. The entire city lord's estate was silent. Lightning's twoses to princesses to his majesty's tea. His highness has instructed that you should drink some hot porridge after you wake up. Please wait a moment. Xiaoma was also a bit hungry. Yin had fed her more than half a bowl of porridge in the morning, so her stomach felt a bit empty right now. They're all at the city gate tower. A portion of the injured in the city have mutated. His Majesty has brought some people to patrol the inner city. Lightning shook her head and said, City Lord Lin has ordered people to carry out the city defense cannons. The current situation is still under control. Little Master, His Majesty said that if you feel unwell, you should rest a bit more. I'm fine. Arbor found a hairband and casually tied her long hair. Let's go out and take a look. Relaxing the meridians and moving around was also beneficial to one's health. Let's go to the city gate tower. She wanted to see if the entire Balon city was really completely surrounded by zombies. Chapter 792. When Arbor appeared at the foot of the city gate tower in high spirits, she immediately received many silent looks mixed with quite a few secret eye rolls. Kong Rumio was currently feeding medicine to a young mystic cultivator who had practically exhausted all of his mystic energy. When she looked up, she saw that crown princess leisurely walking over as if she was taking a stroll in her own backyard. Kong Rumio's face immediately darkened, and she was furious. Other people were risking their lives to fight the zombies on the city gate tower. Yet this crown princess slept all the way until the afternoon and came to patrol while carrying a hand warmer. They had been fighting the zombies for an entire day and night. The crown princess's leisurely appearance was too deserving of a beating. Wenren Ningjing creased her brows and gently tugged at Kong Rumio. It couldn't be helped. The crown prince covered the sky with one hand in Balon City and wanted to protect his dainty little wife with all his might. Even if other people found him an eyesore, they couldn't say anything. Arbor climbed up the city gate tower and pattered over to the city wall to take a look. His small mouth immediately formed an O shape. So many zombies. When City Lord Lin turned around and saw this crown princess the Great, he almost knelt down. He wiped his sweat and said, "Crown princess, why have you come? The wind on the city gate tower is strong. How about you go down first?" When Wenren Ningjing saw the city lord's fawning face, she promptly turned her face away, unable to continue watching. This city lord Lin normally looked like a man, but in front of the crown princess, he became a wretch, which made her a bit angry. Wenren Ningjing reached out and helped several weak mystic cultivators to the side. At times like this, mystic cultivators' long-range attacks could thoroughly display their strengths. There were about 500 mystic cultivators gathered in the city, and they went into battle one after another, bombarding the densely packed zombies below the city wall. Arbor stood next to the defensive wall and looked down with rapt attention. Sure enough, an army of over 10,000 zombies was climbing the wall bravely. Severed limbs filled the gaps in the city walls, and a long string of corpse puppets hung from the city gates. Everyone was pushing and shoving. Under City Lord Lin's command, the cannons fired and landed in the middle of the zombie horde, immediately blasting a dozen or so zombies into pieces. Don't you find it strange? After fighting for a day and a night, why hasn't the number of corpse puppets decreased? 10,000 corpse puppets, if they fought desperately, there would be a time when they would be killed. Arbor's words stunned Lin Yongi. His face stiffened as he turned to look at the young crown princess. He had never thought of this question before. Could it be that this siege was premeditated by someone who had secretly transported large batches of zombies in a Balon city in an unending stream? Arbor thought more than City Lord Lin. Inexplicably, she thought of the underground village. Those neurotic demonic cultivators seemed to take pleasure in killing the corpse puppets. Could it be that the underground village wasn't just a base for cultivating demonic cultivators? What is its real underground operation? Raising zombies? Arbor's chilly eyes narrowed, and she turned around to walk down the city gate tower. Kong Rumio sneered. Do you really think this is your own back garden, just going through the motions and patrolling? Arbor turned a deaf ear to this mocking voice. She didn't have time to deal with these idiots right now. She had to find the crown prince as soon as possible and inform him of her suspicions. None of these people understood her, so she couldn't be bothered to waste her breath on them. After descending the city gate tower, she heard cries of alarm coming from a small plaza nearby. It's Physician Feng. Be careful. Physician Feng has mutated. Chapter 793. Previously, after Feng Manyun and Shangqin had blended in with the crowd, they had been hiding in the crowd in the small plaza. 300 to 400 guards from the city lord's estate were standing guard outside the small plaza. It wasn't until dawn that several physicians from Celestial Medicine Valley came over to examine the bodies of the people in the Shed District. Soon, the small batches of people were all finished with their examinations and were taken away from the small plaza. The people in the small plaza gradually decreased. Feng Manyun felt very uncomfortable, her whole body alternating between hot and cold. She shrunk inside her filthy cloak and hugged her knees, involuntarily burying her head. Meanwhile, Xiangqin had been secretly watching her miss the entire time, and she asked worriedly, "Miss, did the black rank pill take effect? How do you feel right now?" "Not good, not good, not good at all." Her whole body was very uncomfortable. Feng Manyun's heart was even filled with boundless panic. Why didn't that black rank pill, which was used to save her life, seem to have any effect? It couldn't be. She must be scaring herself. How could the life-saving pill that Master gave her not be able to save her? Creak, creak, yeah. Why was her neck so stiff? When she twisted her neck, she could even hear the creaking sound of her bones rotating. Little Mississippi, Xiangqin turned around to look at her, and she was nearly scared out of her wits. Heavens! Why were Mrs. Eyeballs slightly protruding, and her neck was also bulging with veins that resembled thin vines? It looked very frightening. Feng Manyun turned around, and her protruding eyes stared fixedly at Xiangqin beside her. She called out, "Xiangqin." Her nose suddenly twitched, and she abruptly extended a pair of claws. In front of Xiangqin, the joints of that pair of hands suddenly twisted, and a section of her fingernails also grew out. She had clearly mutated. This frightened Xiangqin so much that she jumped up high and scrambled backwards, crying out tragically, "Miss!" On the side, a woman carrying a child came face to face with Feng Manyun, who had suddenly pounced forward, and she immediately revealed a horrified expression. "Physician Feng? It's Physician Feng? Physician Feng is actually mixed in with our crowd? Heavens! Her appearance. Be careful. Physician Feng has mutated." Ah! The woman carrying the child was rather nimble, and she rolled away on the spot, evading Feng Manyun's claw. On the other hand, a thin and frail man beside her was not as lucky as the woman. Caught off guard, Feng Manyun tore off a piece of flesh from his arm, causing him to grimace in pain as he cried out loudly. The city lord's estate's guards, who had acted promptly upon hearing the news, surrounded them in full armor. They flung a lasso as thick as the rim of a bowl at Feng Manyun and that thin and weak man. At this time, Feng Manyun had already completely finished the process of living body mutation. She widened her bulging, bloodshot eyes, and with a furious roar, she dodged that lasso at an abnormally fast speed. The skinny man wasn't so lucky, and his head was caught in the noose of a few city lord's mansion guards. With a tug and pull, the thin and weak man was dragged to the ground by the lasso. Under the combined efforts of several city lord's mansion guards, he was dragged all the way across the square. The guard raised his sword and chopped off the thin man's head, causing the people to scream in horror. Physician Feng, this jinx, clearly knew that she had been clawed by a zombie earlier, yet she still mixed in with the crowd and took someone else's life for nothing. Even if Feng Manyun saw the disdainful and hateful gazes of the women nearby, she wouldn't be able to comprehend it. Chapter 794. Because she had already completely lost the mind and soul that belonged to a human. Roar! Feng Manyun let out an inhuman roar from the depths of her throat. The two guards from the city lord's estate flung out the lassos in their hands and cooperated appropriately, trapping Feng Manyun from both sides. The two of them simultaneously berated her and tightened the lassos from both sides. In the blink of an eye, the two lassos were stretched taut, tightly trapping Feng Manyun in the center. Feng Manyun roared and suddenly exerted her strength, jumping up abruptly. She swung her left and right arms while howling like a ghost. Following her vigorous flinging of her arms, the two guards from the city lord's estate staggered forward a few steps due to Feng Manyun's immense strength. Xiangqin shrunk to the side in fright, not even daring to breathe loudly. She tightly covered her mouth with both hands as she gazed at this kind of miss in horror. All of a sudden, several guards from the city lord's estate were flung away heavily by Feng Manyun's immense strength. Bang! The guards from the city lord's estate crashed heavily onto the ground, feeling dizzy as if they were dizzy from the fall. Junior's sister Feng. At this time, the two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples finally realized that this mutated zombie was actually their Celestial Medicine Valley's junior sister Feng. The two people's expressions turned unsightly on the spot. Celestial Medicine Valley's disciples actually mutated into zombies. This kind of thing absolutely wouldn't be honorable if it got out. Why did junior sister Feng become like this? She was still fine when she left Celestial Medicine Valley for practical training. But now, junior sister Feng actually mutated into a zombie? How could people accept this kind of thing? While the Celestial Medicine Valley disciples were at a loss out of fear, they heard Feng Manyun's fierce roar as she suddenly pounced toward the outside of the small plaza. And at this time, Arbor just happened to come down from the city gate tower and pass by the small plaza. Suddenly, she saw a zombie wrapped in a tattered cloak dashing out. She didn't think too much about it at once and hurled a burst of mystic energy in that direction. Crown Princess, wait a minute! The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples suddenly cried out in alarm as their expressions changed drastically. Arbor turned a deaf ear to the cries of the two disciples. Boundless profound energy once again gathered in his hand and fiercely slapped towards the corpse puppet. The pure-colored mystic energy crashed heavily against Feng Manyun's head like raging waves, sending her flying on the spot. Bang! Feng Manyun crashed heavily onto the ground, her bones creaking all over. Like a maggot, she curled her limbs and crawled on the ground. When Arbor's gaze fell on her, his eyes gradually turned cold. So it turned out to be that Feng Manyun who had escaped after drugging the farm? As for how she ended up in such a miserable state, Arbor didn't want to know at all. Was there a need for her to waste her time on an unrelated person? Crown Princess, please show mercy. The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples' expressions abruptly changed as they dashed madly in Feng Manyun's direction. Unfortunately, before they could reach Feng Manyun, they watched as the Crown Princess summoned a black feral from her conscious pool. With an abnormally apathetic expression, she promptly made a prompt decision and smashed the feral down heavily on Feng Manyun's head. Roar! Feng Manyun let out an inhuman howl. That head that could be considered intact was instantly smashed into smithereens by this feral, and there was no way to save her. Crown Princess, that's our Celestial Medicine Valley's disciple. The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples glared fixedly at Arbor with reddened eyes. Chapter 795. It was as if the little lady in front of them was their mortal enemy who had killed their loved ones. So what? Arbor swept them a cold glance, his expression grim and wooden without the slightest change. Celestial Medicine Valley disciples also don't have special privileges. That apathetic and calm voice stated a fact. Could it be that I didn't kill a zombie? Before the two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples could speak, Arbor coldly interrupted them. If it's a zombie, then it must be killed. Could it be that I'm still keeping it for the new year? We have black rank pills that can treat junior sister Feng. The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples roared indignantly. Who told you to kill her? Junior Marshall Sister Feng's life has been ruined in your hands just like that. Don't you feel ashamed? I don't feel it. Arbor glanced at them apathetically before turning to leave. Despicable. You simply treat human life like grass. The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples glared at the Crown Princess resentfully, their fists clenched tightly. Why does Celestial Medicine Valley have brainless disciples like you? Arbor shook his head as he looked at them disappointedly. Who are you calling brainless? The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples were angered half to death as they glared furiously at Arbor. Arbor already couldn't be bothered to talk to them anymore, so he turned around and coldly tossed them a sentence. You guys are truly too lacking compared to Shisha Valley. A bunch of brainless people fishing for compliments. How are they worthy of being on par with Shisha Valley? They should just hide from the world early and save themselves from making a spectacle of themselves. Although you are the Crown Princess and have a lofty status, We won't allow you to slander our Celestial Medicine Valley like this. How was Celestial Medicine Valley inferior to Shishao Valley? Shishao Valley had vanished without a trace these past few years. They weren't worthy of being on par with Celestial Medicine Valley. The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples flew into a rage, simply about to go crazy from the stoic face in front of them. Arbor glanced at them coldly. If it weren't for your Celestial Medicine Valley's people being inefficient and dilly-dallying, how could you have harmed other people after all this time without discovering that Feng Mannion had mutated alive? That's right. The woman holding the child from before, who had nearly been scratched by Feng Mannion's mutation, nodded repeatedly in support upon hearing this. It could be said that the amount of anger the two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples had suffered in their entire lives wasn't as much as today. Look at how the Crown Princess was criticizing them, as if the entire Celestial Medical Valley was worthless. Someone carry Feng Mannion's corpse out and cremate it. Arbor ordered expressionlessly. No, all of the Celestial Medicine Valley's disciples, even if they die on the path of training, must return to the Celestial Medicine Valley in one piece. The Celestial Medicine Valley's disciple voiced out to stop her. There's no need to trouble the Crown Princess. We will deal with Junior Sister's corpse ourselves. The City Lord's mansion's guards and the crowd all looked at each other in dismay. They only felt that these two Celestial Medicine Valley's disciples' thoughts were too strange. Although the Crown Princess looked quite young, her decisiveness in handling matters was far from what those two short-sighted Celestial Medicine Valley disciples could compare to. No matter if it was the guards or the crowd, everyone simultaneously stood on the Crown Princess's side at this moment. They couldn't resist criticizing the Celestial Medicine Valley's disciples at the same time as they shared a common enemy. Are the two of you sick? The Crown Princess already said that this physician Feng had mutated into a zombie. She's a zombie. Of course we have to cremate her. Aren't you afraid that she'll come back to life midway and gnaw the two of you to death? I think these two people's brains are spoiled. Chapter 796. Don't waste your breath on them. Burn! The crowd shouted with surging emotions, and they promptly pushed aside the two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples with unsightly expressions. Several City Lords' estates' royal guards carried Feng Mannion to the cremation site to dispose of the corpse without a second word. Humph! Since that's the case, there's no need for us two brothers to continue staying here to invite humiliation. As for the matter of the examination, leave it to your almighty crown, Prince Consort. The two Celestial Medicine Valley disciples angrily flicked their sleeves and left, leaving behind the indignant crowd. Arbor shook her head, remaining speechless for a while. Two grown men in their 30s to 40s actually had such immature behavior, mixing business and personal matters together. Because of personal matters, he suddenly threw away his work and quit. His behavior was really shameful. Seeing that there were less than 100 people left in the small plaza, Arbor had them line up one by one to inspect their bodies. After the inspection, the commoners were naturally led into the city by the City Lord's estate's guards. Because of the living body mutation, City Lord Lin acted as if he was facing a great enemy. He ordered people to demarcate 5 areas in the inner city and temporarily gather all the commoners there. Most of them were the elderly, the weak, women, and children. As for the able-bodied youths, those who could fight and resist were practically all dispatched to the city gates to help. Arbor turned around and walked into the city. Have you contacted the Crown Prince? Lightning shook his head as he followed behind her. Not yet. Arbor nodded slightly. Then she would just stroll around the inner city. Even if she couldn't bump into the Crown Prince, she should be able to see him when she returned to the city gates. Besides Arbor and Lightning, no one else could be seen on the entire street. As they walked along the desolate street, Arbor would occasionally stop and raise the crow repeating crossbow in her hand to kill 1 or 2 zombies hiding behind the walls. Her movements were so swift and precise that even Lightning, who was following closely behind her, couldn't help but click his tongue in amazement. The Crown Princess practically didn't need to aim. This level of proficiency and control in killing zombies didn't seem to be something that could be practiced overnight. Arbor pondered continuously in her mind. The speed at which the corpse puppets mutated in this life was clearly much faster than in the previous life. In her previous life, it was only when she was 18 years old that ordinary patients would undergo a living mutation. However, in this life, it had happened 3 years earlier. If that was the case, according to the accelerated time, it wouldn't take long for the water source to be infected. Crown Princess, please be careful. Don't get hurt, not even an ordinary cut. Lightning followed closely behind Arbor, worriedly reminding him. It's okay, Lightning. Arbor faintly shook his head, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Do you think they mutated because they were injured? Isn't that the case? Lightning was taken aback. She turned to look at Arbor. Arbor didn't say anything. He just looked up at the dark sky. It seemed like there was going to be another storm tonight. Thinking back to his previous life, from the corpse transformation to the corpse puppet, Arbor had a vague idea of what was going on. Everyone thought that this was just a natural disaster. However, at this moment, Xiaomu increasingly felt that perhaps this was a premeditated man-made disaster. Crown Princess. A shadow guard suddenly appeared beside Lightning and bowed. This subordinate has found traces of His Highness the Crown Prince. However, His Highness the Crown Prince's group seems to have encountered a little trouble. Arbor abruptly turned his head. Chapter 797. Emollien's group had indeed run into a bit of trouble. They had originally received a report and had gone to a temple in the south of the city to clean up the corpse puppets inside. Who would have thought that they had only seen a few corpse puppets and had dealt with them quite quickly? However, when they came out, they ran into a crazy woman who, without saying a word, tangled with Emolien and insisted on capturing him alive to present him to their family's Luosha princess. The group of people fought, and the crazy woman took out an offensive spirit weapon, covering Emolien's group inside. That offensive spirit weapon was like an upside-down transparent bowl, forming a small spiritual domain, and was actually somewhat powerful. That woman only needed to control it, and a few wisps of spirit power would fill the entire small spiritual domain with berserk lightning power. When Arbor and Lightning came over, they just happened to see this scantily clad woman standing outside the small spiritual domain, threatening with a ferocious face. Are you going to obey or not? You man, how can you be so unappreciative? It's not like I want you to climb a mountain of swords or plunge into a sea of fire. I just want you to marry our Luosha princess. Hurry up and say something. Hurry up. Why don't you go die? Huifeng angrily scolded, his small eyes glancing at the crown prince beside him. Where did this crazy woman come from, actually saying that she wanted their crown prince to marry? What Luosha princess? He had never heard of her. Bah, even if he had heard of her, so what? Even if he had heard of her, it was still not enough for his master to marry. His Highness was also really strange, not reacting at all, calmly sitting inside the small spiritual domain like an old monk sitting still and counting mushrooms. Several wisps of faint flames were burning inside the small spiritual domain. What's she doing? Arbor asked crisply. Jojo. Emolien's eyes lit up, and with a slight movement of her finger, the translucent spiritual domain around her suddenly dissipated. The woman controlling the offensive spirit weapon was shocked, suddenly feeling pain in her finger. Looking again, the spirit weapon that was originally on her finger flew into the man's palm with a whoosh. Ah, my defensive thunder shield, the woman exclaimed, staring blankly as the ring was clamped between the man's two fingers. How dare you? The woman shrieked, but before she could reprimand him, she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her conscience and spat out a mouthful of blood. No, the faint mental connection between him and the spirit artifact had actually been erased. Yes, how could this be? The woman began to tremble all over. She had begged the princess for a very long time before the princess bestowed it to her. It had only been 2 days since he got it, and it was already taken away by someone else. Why? Even after the spiritual tool had recognized its master, the spiritual connection could still be erased? How could she know that for a spirit tool master, erasing the connection between a spirit tool and its master was a simple matter? Prince Mo's silence earlier was only because he was moving stealthily and had no time to deal with this person. Now that it was done, he took the spirit artifact and used his bare hands to roast it, then walked to Arbor's side and held her small hand, waving it in front of her eyes. "For you to play with." Arbor reached out to take it, but saw that the ring had been newly forged by Prince Mo, and now it was completely black, covered with a faint silver light. Prince Mo held her small hand, and the ring that was originally in Arbor's hand was about to disperse its spiritual light, but now quietly hid its brilliance in his hand. This spirit artifact is not bad. It can cover 15 people at once. Chapter 798. It'll form a tiny spirit domain. Jojo, as long as you imbue a wisp of mystic energy into it, the spirit domain will be filled with violent lightning energy. It'll be able to strike those zombies into ashes in a matter of minutes. Isn't that quite fun? Arbor fiddled with the ring in his hand. It is quite fun. Then how many times can it be used? Arbor fiddled with it for a while before putting the tiny ring on his finger. At most, it can be used continuously for about 10 times. Huifeng wordlessly averted his gaze. Cough, cough, cough. The woman who had lost her spiritual artifact glared resentfully at the muttering couple on the other end. A mocking expression appeared on her face. "Stinky man, did you think that you could give a defensive thunder barrier to that slut next to you just because you used some despicable methods to forcefully erase my mental connection to it? Don't let your imagination run wild. In this kind of lower star domain, not just any Tom, Dick, or Harry can comprehend the power of the 5 spirits and use it to control a spiritual artifact." A green vine abruptly darted out of Arbor's sleeve. The vine transformed into a small, emerald green claw and flew to the woman's face in an instant. Without any explanation, it slapped her so hard that 2 of her teeth fell out. Bam! The woman knelt on the ground with a dumbfounded expression, her body involuntarily trembling. How is this possible? She was a level 2 spiritual master, but she was actually slapped to the ground by an unknown little slut from the lower star domain. "I'll kill you." An extremely thin stream of water suddenly darted out of the woman's hand toward Arbor. The light of a firefly dares to compete with the brilliance of the sun and moon. Arbor coldly glanced at that person. With a quick flick of his finger, the stream of water instantly condensed into an ice blade and stabbed toward the woman's chest with a whoosh. Ah! The woman rolled on the ground several times, and her eyes almost froze in horror. In that instant, the ice blade instantly split into 9 and shot out with whooshes, all of them stabbing the dozen or so members of the team next to her. Impossible! How could such a powerful water spirit master appear in the lower star field? The woman stared at Arbor as if she had seen a ghost. "I'll let you have a taste of a defensive thunder barrier." Xiao Mu sneered. She activated her spiritual weapon, and a translucent light barrier immediately enveloped the woman and her operation team members. Crackle! Lightning bolts smashed down with a loud bang. The woman trembled, and her mouth was wide open. She stared at Arbor in disbelief. How could this be? When she first took control of the spiritual weapon, it took her at least 2 days and 1 night to familiarize herself with it. She even had to endure a lot of lightning before she was able to form a contract with this spiritual weapon with such sincerity that it could split open metal and stone. But now that little girl? The woman's intuition told her that she had made a mistake. Today, she had kicked an iron plate. Arbor withdrew his small hand, and the translucent light shield disappeared in the blink of an eye. The woman heaved a sigh of relief, and her tone softened as she hastily said, "Little girl, we're from the Rakshasa Ghost Sect. Today, we were blind to have misjudged these 2 esteemed guests." Before she could finish speaking, the little girl waved her hand, and the light shield covered the group again. Obliterate! Huifeng's eyelids twitched, and he wordlessly turned his face away. The woman and her team looked up in horror only to see hundreds and thousands of lightning bolts interweaving into the shape of a Chinese character. Amidst their screams, they slashed down to "See you tomorrow." Chapter 799. The Rakshasa Ghost Sect group was instantly scared out of their wits, and the woman's intestines almost turned green with regret. She didn't expect that a little girl who didn't seem to have any lethality would be able to control a spirit weapon so skillfully in minutes. Even with her abilities, she might not be able to make the defensive thunder barrier exhibit such great effects. From this, it could be seen how frightening this little girl was. Lightning filled the entire small spiritual domain and weaved into the shape of a Chinese character, pressing down on everyone's head step by step. The woman was the first to see a member's arm being swallowed by lightning. Then, she widened her eyes in horror as she watched the web-like lightning cut through her head. Arbor put away the defensive thunder barrier and turned the ring on her finger. Not bad. This spirit weapon is rather interesting. Huifeng and the others silently glanced at their crown princess, then simultaneously looked back at the severed limbs strewn all over the ground and shuddered. Didn't they already know the extent of the crown prince consort's cruelty? What kind of place is the Rakshasa Ghost Sect? Arbor rubbed the ring on her finger. This ring had the same effect as the defensive ring on her finger. If one didn't look closely, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference. The Rakshasa Ghost Sect is a relatively secretive sect on Seacone Planet. Prince Mo grasped Arbor's hand and turned to walk toward the city gate. They do all kinds of business, from selling illicit salt, escorting bodyguards, murdering people for their goods, assassinating officials. As long as it's a job that can earn them money, they'll take it all, Prince Mo explained aloofly. They were once wiped out by a righteous sect 10 years ago. They've vanished without a trace these past few years and haven't appeared much. Arbor looked up and glanced at the crown prince. Who is the Rakshasa princess? Huifeng and the others had actually heard of the Rakshasa princess before, and the Hidden Night Pavilion had even done quite a bit of research on her. The Rakshasa princess is their sect master. According to rumors, the Rakshasa princess is a dainty lady with unparalleled beauty, Huifeng interrupted. Her hobby is to collect all kinds of handsome men. That Rakshasa princess also uses people as vessels to suck their essence and mystic energy? The little girl asked with a curious blink. Our dear Huifeng suddenly couldn't fucking continue. Crown princess, can't you see that the crown prince is glaring at me? How could this subordinate continue to speak? This subordinate does not dare to say such words that are not suitable for children. Is Princess Raksha the sister of Granny, which from Coitus faction? Granny, which also likes different men, sucking their vitality. Arbor had an attitude of wanting to get to the bottom of things. Emolien was speechless. They're not sisters. They just have the same interest in handsome men. But what's so good about men? Why do they like different kinds of beautiful men so much? Arbor murmured. Could it be some kind of disease? His Highness the Crown Prince and his male subordinates looked at each other and their mouths twitched. Although the Crown Princess was ferocious, she was strangely adorable. Ahem, Crown Princess, didn't you say earlier that you had something to discuss with the Crown Prince? Lightning hastily changed this strange topic and reminded Arbor. Oh, that's right. Arbor nodded. Emolien, let's find a place to sit down, and I'll tell you in detail. Okay. Emolien breathed a sigh of relief and pursed her thin lips into a smile. Chapter 800. If the little girl asked him again, what exactly does the Rakshasa princess like about beautiful men? Emolien didn't mind personally carrying the little fellow and demonstrating. The two casually entered an abandoned house, found a relatively clean room, and sat down at the table. Arbor used his mystic sense to open his inner world and took out 2 steaming bowls of soup from the all-purpose food box. He handed one bowl to Emolien and held the other bowl for himself. Emolien had been busy the whole day and definitely didn't eat properly. This bowl of soup was for him to fill his stomach first. Hurry and drink. Black bone chicken soup is very nourishing. We'll talk after you finish. The little fellow handed him a spoon and held the soup in his hands, drinking it in small sips. Crown Prince Emo was extremely moved. As long as his little emperor darling treated him slightly better, Crown Prince Emo felt that he would definitely be moved by the heavens and the earth. Thus, he shattered a bit more of this stoic baby's layers of ice. The Crown Prince's goal was to defrost his baby as much as possible and warm her heart. Amen. It would be best if she smiled at him often. That would be perfect. Arbor looked at him in bewilderment, his bright black eyes staring at him. Why aren't you drinking? It's delicious. Amen. Prince Emo hastily drank a mouthful, but he almost scalded himself. Are you an idiot? Arbor rolled his eyes and reached out to take out a handkerchief to wipe the corner of his mouth. This soup is still warm. It's very hot. Jojo, you even carry hot soup with you. If this treatment was placed in peacetime, it would be especially blissful to be able to drink a mouthful of hot soup at any time when one went out for training. Amen, hurry and finish it. Arbor watched him finish the soup and then took out 3 dishes and 2 bowls of rice from the food box. He handed 1 bowl to him. Eat. We'll talk while we eat. Prince Emo was instantly dumbfounded. Jojo, you really cooked rice and brought it out? No. I have a lunchbox with a lot of food in it, but I didn't cook it. Arbor stuffed a mouthful of rice into his mouth and said casually, Let's talk business. According to my observation, every time there is a large-scale outbreak of zombies, there was a bird about the size of Ching Luan that would fly across the sky. Perhaps there was more than one. Maybe there are a few of them, but they're flying high, so we might not be able to notice them. Doesn't it look a bit like a nighthawk? That kind of bird? You noticed it too. Arbor chewed a mouthful of rice and nodded vigorously. That's right. I call them nightcaw birds. Prince Mo's expression turned slightly solemn. He put down the spoon in his hand and said, This kind of nightcaw bird's flying speed isn't any slower than the blue phoenix's. Jojo, come on. Crown Prince Emo pulled Xiaomu up and walked to the room next door. Suddenly, with a flick of his finger, he abruptly released a giant bird carcass from his inner world, which practically filled more than half of the room. Arbor's eyes suddenly brightened. Yes, it's this kind of bird. Heavens, so Emolian was actually that sharp. She had already shot and killed a nightcaw bird at some point in time and hid it in her inner world to study it for a while. Back in Quoto Village, on the night of the zombie outbreak, she had vaguely seen this kind of nightcaw bird. At that time, a thought flashed through her mind, but she couldn't grasp the fragments of memory. It wasn't until last night, when she saw the bird's afterimage flying past from the window, that she suddenly woke up. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.